Jersey.
Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah. 97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
2 outs remaining for Bohm. There's the magenta ball out toward left center field, and that one is into the bullpen, number 21 for Alec Bohm.
As heard last night on 97.3 ESPN, the Home Run Derby was a fun show. Alec Bohm was the leader after one round, 21 bombs for Alec Bohm, but he got knocked out in the second round in a swing off. But it was a fun night, little long night. They gotta work on that. It was a long night at the Home Run Derby last night, but obviously Bohm did a good job. He presented himself pretty well, and the Major League Baseball Home Run Derby last night kind of took center stage. And the All-Star Game tonight, you can listen to it all on 97.3 ESPN. What's going on, everybody? This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. Well, the All-Star Game is kind of the midsummer classic, meaning you're at the middle of the season. It's not the official halfway point, but there's a lot of things you can look at in first half and second half doses. And we will do a little bit of that today on the show. We got a jam-packed show for you. Jim Duquette, former MLB Major League Baseball GM, was on the show yesterday. We're going to play some of the audio from that today and kind of break it down a little bit closer. Bryce Harper has a suggestion that maybe even the commissioner is considering. Frank Close has the Phillies mailbag. Paul Skeens will start tonight in the All-Star Game. We're going to get into Skeens and what he means to baseball. And the whole, last week he was throwing that no-hitter. They pulled him from the game. He's starting the All-Star Game tonight. And just kind of the dynamics of the young players in baseball right now and what that all means for where this game is. We want to get into a little bit later on, and you guys can help out throughout the day. Josh wrote an article over at 973ESPN.com about the 10 Philly athletes 25 years old and younger. It's not a great list. This is not a town that has a lot of young players in it that are all that exciting. I wrote down my list. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. I mean, all 10 of them you hope become something, but really only 4 of them, maybe 5 of them, that have actually done something. So you guys can send your picks in throughout the day. Then in the 5 o'clock hour, I'll compare my list to Josh's list. I'd be pretty shocked if we don't have at least 8 of the same players on this list. And I think 4 of them are very obvious. And then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, you can start throwing darts at the board at that one. So we can get into that throughout the day. And then at 5 o'clock tonight, we'll kind of go over the list and see who you guys sent in, compare it to our list. Josh made a list. I have a list. 609-403-0973. Couple takeaways from the Derby last night. Number one, it's way too long. It's ridiculous how long that thing. And Bohm hit first. He hit 21. Was he the first guy to hit last night, Bohm, or first or second?
He was the second.
Second guy, right. He did not hit again for an hour and 45 minutes. That's ridiculous.
Mike, I'm a big home run derby guy. The home run derby last night became like a slam dunk competition. It became boring last night for me. For the first time in a long time. It was so long. I looked at one point and I was like, wait a minute, Gunnar Henderson still hasn't hit yet? Like, oh my goodness.
They were showing the guys hitting in the tunnels underneath, just trying to keep themselves busy. I mean, think about this. Like, I watched Bohm when he came up to hit against Hernandez, right, and he hit 3 homers. Then he calls timeout. He had 11 homers after that. You know, that whole thing, him hitting those 11, that got a little bit exciting. And then the 7 Phillies players like cheering him on, and then he gets to the swing off. Like, that moment was kind of cool. But other than that, I mean, there just was like nothing there. I mean, listen, a home run derby, by the sheer nature of it, it gets monotonous. You're just watching a guy hit home run after home run after home run. So instead of extending it and making it longer, you should try to make them hit home runs in a short amount of time, not a home runs in a long. 3 minutes is an eternity to be up there hitting home runs.
Well, remember the original rule before they started making changes was you got 10 outs. That was it. 10 outs, you're done. Move on to the next guy. Then they turned it into, well, let's make it a timed affair. So you have to do it within a certain amount of time. Now it's, well, you can't get any more than 40 balls. And that's the reason why it took so long last night, was because this 40 ball rule was supposed to be put in to help the guys not do as much swinging, not wear them out. Well, it wore me out watching it, Mike.
I thought it was painful to watch. I really did. And I watched more of it than I thought I was going to watch. And I really only watched Bohm. Soon as Bohm was eliminated, I bailed. And I didn't even see him hit the first time. I missed him in the beginning. I didn't get home until a little bit later on. But I watched him against Hernandez. And I thought the dynamic of him against Hernandez was good because Bohm only hit 3. Then he calls timeout. Then he rips off 11. But even that was too long. I mean, the whole thing was too long. And on a night that's supposed to be a celebration of the game, here's the thing. I like Alec Bohm. I appreciate Alec Bohm. Nobody knows who Alec Bohm is. Nobody. So this is the same as like the dunk contest and the 3-point shootout. Like, nobody knows these guys. You're supposed to have a night where you really are showcasing your stars. And you have Alec Bohm out there ripping 21 home runs, which is outstanding, and nobody knows who the guy is. These guys are out there way too long. They got to shorten this thing up.
That's why compared to the slam dunk competition, the home run derby used to be the biggest names in baseball. And now the guys come up with these excuses not play.
You know what, though? 3 of the top 5 MVP candidates in the American League were in the Derby last night.
Yeah, I give guys like Gunnar Henderson and others credit. I do get Jose Ramirez.
Right, there were a couple of guys. The problem is nobody knows who those guys are. Baseball is in a transitional period right now where I think Jim Duquette brought up yesterday there was like 25 first-time All-Stars in the game. I mean, that's a lot of players that really a lot of people don't know who they are. I mean, you would think, well, they're All-Stars. People know them. No, they don't. I mean, if I asked you right now, and I don't want to put you on the spot because you may or may not know the answers to these questions, like, who is the All-Star on the Colorado Rockies?
Well, I know last year was Elias Diaz, the catcher. I don't think it's him this year. I think another catcher got in instead. I don't actually know. Is it a pitcher? Is it a hitter?
Colorado Rocky All-Star representative. I don't know the answer to the question. I'm seeing if you knew the answer to the question.
I know Diaz won it last year because he was the MVP of the All-Star game.
Yeah. There's 32 first-time All-Stars.
Like I know Paul Skeens is one of those first-time All-Stars.
Yeah, well, Paul Skeens is the starting pitcher of the game. I mean, that was a big story. The fact that he was picked to be the starting pitcher of the All-Star game.
Smartest thing baseball has done this year.
Yeah, and that's a whole story in itself. Like the fact that he had this game the other day, he's throwing a no-hitter, they ends up getting pulled from the game, and now he's starting in the All-Star game. The Phillies play the Pirates coming out of the break, and you wonder if he's going to start one of those 3 games on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday against the Phillies.
He's currently, the Pirates don't have anybody scheduled yet.
Right, they do not have any. The only pitcher scheduled for that series right now is
Nola on Friday night.
Aaron Nola Friday night. Yep. You know what's funny too? Like, okay, I just asked you who is the All-Star on Colorado. You'd think I would go to like ESPN.com and just readily find the rosters of the 2 teams. I cannot even find the rosters for these 2 teams. So I have not yet been able to find out who the participant is in the All-Star game. And that's one of the things. Like, I think we've gotten to the point, so many of these All-Star games have evolved. So many of these All-Star games have changed and kind of tweaked, and they've all tried to do something. I think the next iteration of the All-Star game for baseball is to truly put the best players in the game. Hey, every team has a representative. I think we've outlived that. I think we've gotten to a point where that is no longer something that needs to happen. And there's a lot of reasons why I say that. It's a multitude of things. One, yes, when I was a young kid, I would get excited about the possibility of seeing Mike Schmidt play in the All-Star game. Okay, kids are not watching baseball. Like, no offense to them, they're not watching baseball like the kids did when I was growing up. Okay, that's not a get off my lawn. It's just the facts. All right, that's number one. Number two, baseball has stripped the teams that have a representative of their identity by not wearing the uniforms that they are a part of. In other words, there's one Colorado Rocky. Have we identified him yet?
Ryan McMahon.
Okay. Ryan McMahon.
By the way, bad job by me because he's on my fantasy baseball team. I didn't know he was an all-star.
He's probably not an all-star. That's why.
He doesn't deserve to be an all-star.
No. Ryan McMahon is hitting 272 with 14 home runs. So he's having an okay year.
I found it at MLB.com, by the way.
Okay.
So.
Well, I got news for you. A very low percentage of kids in the Denver market are watching the game to see Ryan McMahon play.
Correct.
And if he does enter the game, you wouldn't know it's him because he's wearing a ridiculous uniform.
Oh, these uniforms are disgusting.
Match. So I can understand if you said, hey, we want a participant to represent every team gets an all-star. And he's wearing his Colorado Rockies uniform. And then when 12-year-old Joey in Denver turns on the game and he sees the Colorado Rockies uniform, he can identify that guy. Instead, he's got a ridiculous uniform on and he can't identify him. So we have outlived the necessity of having a player from every single team represent.
Or we should just stop using alternate uniforms for the All-Star game.
Well, that's my point is, if you're going to wear those uniforms, then you don't have a player representing every single team because they become unidentified. This happened last year. The guy who won the MVP was from the Colorado Rockies. He ends up getting the hit that wins him the game, but nobody knew who he was and where he was from. Yeah. The guy had the hit last year, and you're like, who is this guy?
Exactly.
You would want, if I'm the Pittsburgh Pirates tonight, I have one chance to grab the national spotlight. One. I'm not on Sunday Night Baseball. I'm not on the Fox Saturday Game of the Week. I'm not on television ever. Now, I'm imagining that will change. The hard part about putting them on national television is you don't know when Skeens is going to pitch. You can't just randomly select him and hope he pitches that day.
Right.
He has to be scheduled to pitch that day. So if he's not scheduled to pitch on Sunday night, you're not putting them on Sunday night. I see they have 1-2 games coming up on Apple TV Plus. You don't know if Skeens is going to pitch in either one of those games.
Nope. No idea.
So if I'm the Pittsburgh Pirates, I have one shot to grab the national attention. One. It's tonight. My guy is on the mound, and he's got a shirt that says Pittsburgh right across the front, or Pirates, whatever one it is. You know, the Phillies are one of the very few teams in baseball that their road uniforms do not say their city. It says Phillies. Most teams, when they're on the road, it says the city they're from, and when they're at home, it says the moniker.
Right, Pittsburgh, New York, Boston.
The Phillies say Phillies on both home and road. But tonight, if I'm the Pittsburgh Pirates, I want my guy in my uniform. That's my one shot, and they have ruined that.
Yeah, they ruined their one opportunity.
Absolutely. Baseball has taken the identity of their stars away by taking them out of the uniforms and putting them in these ridiculous uniforms. Why? For the almighty dollar. They want to sell a couple of extra All-Star game uniforms so that they can put more money in their pocket rather than the big picture of promoting the star of the game, Paul Skeens, and getting the Pirate jersey sold and the Pirates a little bit of national attention. Now,
by the way, can you imagine how many Skeens jerseys would be sold just tonight if people saw him wearing the Pirates Skeens jersey? A ton.
I would imagine that they would do pretty good. Yes, I would imagine that they would. If you had Skeens wearing the Pirate jersey, you would probably. And listen, this is the way that a player in today's world becomes a very popular player.
Right.
Like back in the day, you would be a fan of your team and your player in the All-Star game. Well, now kids are more likely to be fans of a particular player than they are a particular team.
Correct.
So this would change the dynamics for a team like Pittsburgh. Now, it doesn't, not to say that, he's not going to get mentioned, that he's a member of the Pirates and all that stuff, but it's certainly not the same as having the jersey on.
And again, part of the reason why you're starting Paul Skeens is because you're capitalizing on this shooting comet right now. They were talking about last night on ESPN radio, Jordan Rodman was filling in for Q Myers last night. And he was saying all of his son's friends know who Paul Skeens is. And they watch Paul Skeens because they know he is Livy Dunn's boyfriend. And they're all they're asking their dad, how do I watch Pirates Skeens games? Mm-hmm. Okay? So you have this one opportunity that you're capitalizing, smartest thing you ever did, start the guy in the All-Star game, and then you do this stupid thing. It's like, hey, we're going to give him this bogus jersey. It looks like he's playing for the opponent at the Savannah Bananas.
609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Tim from Galloway says, Bohm hit great last night. However, the best thing he did last night was hold his laughter the best he could while that horrible national anthem was being sung. Well, apparently there is some news on that. I mean, I hate to put that poor girl under the microscope a little bit, but she has come out today and addressed it by saying that she was drinking last night, that she was drunk during the anthem last night, and that she is admitting herself into rehab. She has apologized. She is, it basically turned into a disaster last night for her. I've never even heard of the person performing last night. I had no idea who she was.
Yeah, until they put her name on the screen.
I had no idea who she was.
I'd never seen her, never heard of her before, anything.
Nothing. All I heard was the reaction to the anthem. And listen, that's a very hard song to sing, but obviously she did not do a very good job. She says she was drunk and she is going to rehab. So there you go. There's some closure to the story, Tim, in Galloway.
I want to know how many people now, moving forward, are going to use I was drunk as the excuse for some of their mistakes at work now.
I think that happens a lot. I mean, Cole from LBI, the Derby should go to 5 outs. Cole, you know what? That's the number in my head. 5. It should be a 5-out thing. You get 5 outs, you're done. That's it.
Keep moving.
Yeah, I mean, if you hit 10 home runs, great. If you hit 7, you get 5 outs. It doesn't need to be who hits 40 home runs. After a while, unless you put on
Josh Hamilton.
Josh Hamilton at Yankee Stadium. Even Bobby Abreu at Comerica Park. There are a couple memorables where a guy hits like 30 or 40. I think Hamilton hit 50 the one year at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
It becomes monotonous. It's just like, okay, there's a home run. Wow, there's a home run. There's another home run. Home run. No, short amount of time. Who can hit the most in a short amount of time? Who can hit 10 in 5 outs? Who can hit 7 in 3? Last night, you got 3 pitches in the swing off. What's his name? You got 3 pitches. He hit 2 out of 3.
Right.
All right. There you go. You moved on. You got 3 chances. Bang. Give him 5. See who hits 5 in a row. If you hit 5, you move on. If you hit 4 out of 5, that's great.
By the way, the 10-out format is when we saw Bobby Abreu, Josh Hamilton, Ken Griffey Jr., Mark McGwire have these amazing performances. Because you knew, look at what they did with so few opportunities. They weren't told you get 40 balls. No, they were told you get 10 outs. Do something with it.
How many of these All-Stars, now a lot of these are pretty, they're recognizable probably to people like you and me, but like that every team needs to get one.
I would say most people have no idea who Jackson Merrill is. I would say most people don't know who Brian Reynolds is.
Is Jackson Merrill the only, he's not the only Padre.
No, he's not.
There's 3 Padres on the team.
Yeah.
I'm talking about now Jackson Merrill, but I'm talking about the teams that only have one representative. Like that have it only because you have to have one. Like, for instance, St. Louis has one guy on the team. Do you think kids in St. Louis really need to see Ryan Helsley pitch?
No.
Actually, he's unavailable. He's not even pitching in the game.
Oh, that makes it even better.
So he is unavailable. What other team only has
Tanner
one
Scott
guy?
of the Marlins. He's the only Marlins guy.
Tanner Scott is the only Marlin. Kyle Finnegan, is he the only? No. C.J. Abrams is also on the team. How many guys make the team?
Well, there's more than ever because so many guys are being brought in because pitchers and players are unavailable. So now it used to be 32. Now it's only God knows how many.
Yeah, like the Cubs have one guy, Imanaga, is on the team. Now he's a guy that you might want to get into the game. Cincinnati has a couple guys. Yeah, it's just too much. You don't need, make it the best of the best players. I think that would help the game and help the weekend and all that stuff. Brian in EHT, crazy idea. He says, hear me out. Home run derby, Top Golf style. They have to hit it somewhere over the fence with others as more points in certain spots further away in a small circle. It's not a bad idea. I mean, it's like an MTV type of when they did the home run derbies with like the softball games or something. If you hit it in like the one ring or something, stuff like that.
Right, you got points for each ring.
Look, the derby's fine. They're outthinking it.
Yeah. By the way, there's 40 guys in the National League All-Star roster.
Yeah, it's too much. 40 All-Stars. There's not 40 All-Stars.
There's not 40 All-Stars.
It's like the Hall of Fame. Now everybody gets in the Hall of Fame.
You get a pick, and you get a jacket, and you get a jacket.
Yeah, I look at it this way. The All-Star game should be a fun night, and they did take a couple steps. Skeen starting the game, I think, was a smart idea and a good step, but you ruined it by not having it in a Pirates jersey.
Right.
Get rid of these jerseys. Get rid of the jerseys. Get rid of the jerseys.
Say it again.
Bring back the players wearing their team's uniforms. That's the first step of getting this game back to some sort of like buzz around it. Let the kids, if they are watching to see their one player on their team, at least let them say, hey, that's my team's jersey right there.
Right.
That's it. That's a guy wearing a Rockies jersey. He's right there. Not whatever. What are they wearing? I don't even know what they're wearing tonight.
Oh, they look horrible. I don't want to describe it. If you haven't seen them,
I've seen the T-shirt. It's like a black T-shirt with like a blue. It says National League on the front.
That's the uniform,
but it's just a T-shirt. I haven't seen the jersey.
Okay, yeah. The jersey looks like it. Like I said, it's the opponent for the Savannah Bananas. Like that's what it looks like to me. It doesn't look like a real Major League Baseball jersey. It looks like it was made for like an exhibition event with some randos joining on the field. See,
I want to be able to get into the All-Star game, get back into it. I got to be honest. I was probably one of the few that did like when the game mattered.
Yeah, you've talked about that. Yep.
Well, listen, you know which All-Star game I remember? 2008, Brad Lidge closes the game out, and the Phillies get home field advantage for the World Series.
Sure.
I remember that game because that close for Lidge in the All-Star game was so important. So important. They had a good thing, and they ruined it. It's like Curb Your Enthusiasm when I can't even think. Larry gives Ted Danson the gift. And he says, hey, you gave me this gift and it has a hole in it. He goes, well, yeah, but I gave it to you, and now it's your problem. I said, oh, come on, Larry. You had a good thought. You just ruined it. I gave you the gift. Now you got to fix it. Who is supposed to, in that instance, who is responsible for returning the defective gift? Is it the gift giver or the gift receiver?
The gift giver.
So if you gave me a shirt that had like a hole in it, and I would say, hey, Josh, thank you for this gift, but it has a hole in it, then you have to return it and get a new one.
My fault. Right. I gave you a defective gift.
I would agree. Take a good thought, you just ruined it. The All-Star game. You had the good thought, you ruined it. You had a game that meant something. Now you ruined it by putting 40 people in it in terrible uniforms. More Sports Bash coming up. 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Live video streaming on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. When we come back, a Sports Bash Tuesday Should the Phillies give up a top 3 prospect for Brett Rooker, plus one name former MLB GM Jim Duquette thinks the Phillies might target? That's next.
You're listening.
Chicken tacos should only be trusted to chicken professionals.
That's where we come in. Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One comes with pico de gallo and creamy chipotle ranch. And the other comes with bacon, lettuce, tomato, and avocado ranch. Chicken experts since 1990. Chicken taco experts since now. Order yours today in the Zax Rewards app. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
With Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
You know, if you're Oakland and you have this player, this really good player who's had a really good season. It started slow, and he's been on fire lately. He's a big power guy, and you have him under control for several more years. He was their all-star last year. The power bat, that's hard to find. There's not a lot of offensive players that are out there and available. Like, that already comes at a premium. And, you know, if you're Philly, the hard part, you know, for them is they don't need them. Would they like them? Yeah. But, you know, you could find a complementary piece that would fit in just fine, too.
Jim Duquette yesterday on the Sports Bash. You heard what he said regarding making a deal for a guy like Brett Rooker. He says Rooker is a premium bat, but the Phillies don't need him. Do you agree? Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. The 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN, at Mike Gill Show. You know, I don't think he's wrong about the whole, like, hey, you don't have to have Brett Rooker. Of course you don't. I mean, there are other options out there. But his reasoning of why, you know, Rooker's probably not the guy, because, you know, he says the Phillies need to replace Whit Merrifield. That was the guy they brought in to be something different, right? He was the guy who was the right-handed bat. He's not a power right-handed bat, but he's a right-handed bat who does something different. But Jim Duquette yesterday on the Sports Fest says they still do need to replace him.
To release Merrifield, you know, if they found a veteran, you know, to kind of replace him and the versatility there, you know, I think you can do something like that. Maybe it's a platoon type situation in the outfield, but I don't think they need to go all in and give up, you know, a huge piece of their future for a Rooker, because they're a pretty well-built team as it is.
Now, he says he doesn't think they need to go all in, that they're a pretty well-built team as is. Do you guys agree with former Mets GM Jim Duquette about what he has to say about them improving this ball club? Well, that's further. He says he wouldn't give up a top prospect for a player like Rooker, a player they don't need.
I wouldn't do it. You know, we always talk about, all right, well, are you one player away from getting to the World Series, right? And the answer to that is yes, you would consider moving maybe one of those guys. But this is already a good and likely, you know, World Series type of team without Brent Rooker. They don't need him.
They don't need him, he said. Is he right? I don't know that I agree. Maybe I'm not disagreeing with the part about Rooker, but I definitely think they have to do something. And he said, look, they have to do something, but they don't need a player of that magnitude, is kind of his point. Like, they don't have to trade a top prospect to get him, to get to improve this club. I don't know that he's wrong about that, like emptying the Aiden Millers, the Justin Crawfords, and the Andrew Painters. I am in the same boat where I don't want to trade those guys either. So how can you improve this team without giving up any of those three guys? The other guy is Dave Dombrowski. Jim Duquette says, I've known the guy for 25 years, and you guys out there listening should have faith.
Yeah, a lot of people have kind of said, Dave Dombrowski's only going to just add on to the roster in smaller pieces. I wouldn't ever assume that with Dave. Dave's going to be a Hall of Fame general manager. I've known him for 25 years, and he's one of the best out there at finding, you know, the right fit. And if he has to spend the extra assets and prospect capital, he'll go do that.
So he's a guy who's Duquette is saying if he has to go spend and empty the coffers, he'll do it. But he's saying, Duquette, that he shouldn't empty the coffers for certain players. In other words, hey, you have options out there. You don't have to give up Painter, Miller, and Crawford to go get them, and you can still improve your team. So I don't want to say it's like have your cake and eat it too type of thing, but it is a situation where he thinks they can get better by not giving up the top prospects in their organization. So, interesting take there by him. What about Mason Miller? He's another big name out there, but as Jim Duquette explains on the Sports Bash on Monday, he doesn't think Oakland can afford to trade Miller this year.
If I'm Oakland, he still has his rookie status. If he ends up being Rookie of the Year this year, they get a draft pick, with the new rules that have been changed. We saw the Orioles get a draft pick this year for Gunnar Henderson being a Rookie of the Year last year. Same thing with Arizona for Corbin Carroll. So Oakland is sitting there looking at potentially another. That's a really valuable pick. I don't think Oakland can afford to trade him.
Yeah, I don't think. His point is Oakland can get more by keeping him and trading him next year than moving him this year. So don't anticipate Mason Miller being traded. That's Jim Duquette, former MLB general manager. Finally, interestingly enough here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, he makes another interesting point here in regard to, all right, I asked him, Dave Dombrowski, 25 years. You know the guy. You've dealt with him. You've probably made trade talks with the guy over the years. What's the type of player he thinks Dave Dombrowski's working the phones for?
I think corner outfield, right? Like, all right, I'll give you a name that has popped up, like a Mark Canha with Detroit, right? Not an overall sexy name, but he would fit perfectly there. He has a great idea of the strike zone, can play multiple outfield positions. He could play left. Outside, he could play a little bit of center field. He could also play right if you needed him to. The right-handed bat, but he hits righties. Like that type of guy, he's one guy that I think would be a really good fit and wouldn't be surprised if they're in on.
Yeah, so Mark Canha, the name that was brought up yesterday, and it's a name that I don't think too many people in the listening audience are getting all that excited about. He's not having a great year. He's not a big power guy. But is he a better version of what you thought Whit Merrifield was going to be?
I certainly think he can be. And I think part of the reason why Canha makes sense is it goes back to what Duquette said about the prospects. Mike, you have basically $1 billion invested in 9-10 players on this roster right now. Canha is a guy who's not going to cost you financially or prospect-wise. At some point, those young prospects are going to need to come up here and do something for you. Because Harper, Turner, Schwarber, Castellanos, Wheeler, Nola, those guys are all going to get old at some point. You can't empty the entire farm system for when those guys get older and you have nobody to come up. So, to me, I don't think this team should be investing a ton of resources in a player that they don't necessarily need. I get it, Matt. Canha's not like an elite player or an exciting player. You didn't see him hit a couple bombs in Citizens Bank Park this weekend, but he's a guy that fits a need on your team.
Kind of. He kind of fits a need. Yeah, he's a veteran player, right-handed bat, can play outfield. He actually plays more first base, I think, maybe about half and half for Detroit. I don't know. If you listen, like I said, if you just make a deal, but here's the thing, like last year, you make a trade with Detroit, ironically enough, which is where Mark Canha is right now. You made a trade for Michael Lorenzen, and you felt like, hey, we didn't have to make a big splash. We just brought in a guy that we thought could help us. He was an all-star. Remember, Lorenzen pitched in the all-star game last year, and he comes here. He could be our fifth starter. He can be a guy who has pitched in the bullpen in the past. He made no impact. He threw a no-hitter, and that's the only memorable thing he really did. And it's great that he threw a no-hitter, and we'll all remember that moment, and his family will remember that moment. It was a great moment. Michael Lorenzen didn't do a damn thing after that. Now, they didn't give up a whole heck of a lot to get him, but he also didn't help you at all. So my question would be, do you want to make the same type of move where you get a guy and maybe he helps you in the regular season win a game or two, and he fills out, the roster on a Saturday, a Sunday afternoon when it's a hot, a day game after night game. But don't you want a guy who come playoff time is going to be a performer for you?
Yes.
Is Mark Canha that guy? Like, if he's starting in left field and Brandon Marsh, because he does not hit lefties, and Mark Canha's out there against a left-handed pitcher, are we thinking, man, what a good deal we made?
Probably not.
Probably not. And that's where, what Jim Duquette's saying is, hey, listen, they don't have to give up the farm to go get a player like Rooker. But I think there's a in-between between Canha and Rooker that maybe is out there.
I just don't know who that player is, because the problem is one of the things he also mentioned to you yesterday, Mike, is that he doesn't think Luis Roberts getting traded.
Yep. He said he doesn't think Luis Roberts getting traded. He doesn't think Mason Miller's getting traded.
So now you're thinning the market. And remember the comment that Buster Olney made, that there's a lot of desperate teams out there, right?
Well, I'll tell you, let's look at that real quick before you go on. There's a lot of desperate teams. Why? Because there's so many teams that are in play for a playoff berth. Let's look at them real quick. We look at the wild card in the National League. We'll start the National League first. Mm-hmm. Atlanta is firmly in the wild card spot. After that, St. Louis is only a half game up on the Mets.
Right.
The Mets are 1 game up on Arizona. Arizona's 1 game out. The Padres are 1 game out. The Pirates are 1.5 games out. The Giants are 3 back. The Reds are 3 back. The Cubs are 3.5 back. Really, the only 3 teams that are Washington's 6 back. Are they out of it? At 6 back, I don't think they're buying.
But I don't know if they're selling either.
Colorado is 16 games out, and the Marlins are 16.5 out. They're the only 2 National League teams that definitively are pulling up the white flag and waving it around and saying, make a phone call to us. Now, on the American League side.
I was going to say really quick, and if Mason Miller is unavailable, everyone's going to be calling for Tanner Scott.
On the American League side, the Yankees are the leader. They're 3.5 up. Minnesota is second, and then Boston. Kansas City's 2 back. They're in it. Houston's 3.5 back. I would imagine Houston's going to go for it. They have a veteran team. It's probably like one of their last shots they have.
Yeah.
They probably go. Tampa Bay's 5.5 back. I think Tampa is a team that probably would listen. Detroit's 7 back. Texas, I would think Texas is going to go for it. They won the World Series last year. They won 7 out of 10. They're 7.5 back. But I think they make one more push after the All-Star break. They have 14 days before the All-Star, the trade deadline. I think they reassess where they are at the end of these 2 weeks. But I think if they're in it, the Rangers make another push. I think Toronto, 9.5, they're done. I think the Angels, 12.5, they're done. Oakland, obviously, 17.5 is done. And Chicago is 27.5 games out. So I think in the American League, you definitely have more teams that are open for business. Chicago, Oakland, L.A., Toronto, possibly Texas, Detroit, and Tampa. I think you have 7 teams on that side. And on the National League, I think you have 3 teams that are definitively open for business.
Yeah, but even with those numbers, it gets back to, so you start slowly taking names off the market, right? Teams that are not selling, teams that are not selling specific players, Miller, Robert Jr., etc. So now the original point I was making, Mike, is that, as Buster Olney was saying, the list of who's left over for a team like the Phillies who's not going to overspend shrinks. So now you might not get the exact player you want. Now, of course, that's you and me and the listeners on 97.3 ESPN. As Duquette said, Dombrowski, he always finds a way to get the right guy. He always finds a way to go get who he wants, right? We've heard that multiple times.
So, he did last year.
He did, and he did the year before, too. Because remember, it was 5:30, you and me were sitting here in the studio, and it was, here's Noah Syndergaard, and here's Brandon Marsh out of nowhere. So We know Dombrowski is not afraid.
No, I said he didn't last year.
Oh, he didn't last year.
Right. They're saying he's not afraid to pull. Yeah, he made trades, but neither one of those trades helped them win a World Series.
I mean, you could argue that Marsh helped you get to the World Series in 2022, at least.
Yeah, Marsh is, he more compliment. Like, now that you had the team together, the deals that they made, like last year, you got Michael Lorenzen.
Right, that was kind of like a shoulder shrug at the end of the year, basically.
Yeah.
So do you think he's maybe trying to be more aggressive this year, saying, look, I didn't get what I wanted out of last year?
I would think, okay, so for instance, you went to the World Series in 2022. That was a surprise. Fine. Last year, you get back to the playoffs, you win again, and then you get disappointed in the NLCS. I think you looked at that as a missed opportunity.
Right.
Now you're the clear favorite, whereas before you were more of a wild card team and you made it and you surprised people. Now you're a clear favorite. If you don't win, you become the disappointment. Right. Now, not winning last year, you were a disappointment. But could you imagine if you win the division by double digits, 100+ wins, and you lose to that Arizona team, a team like that again? Which, by the way, that's what you're going to get matched up with. In the wild card teams, none of these teams are going to win like 90 games. I mean, the Mets right now are 49-46, and they're in the playoffs. San Diego is 50-49. They're in one game out. Pittsburgh is 48-48. They're a game and a half out. So you're going to get matched up against a team that's going to have like 85 wins. And you lose that, you better make sure that doesn't happen. And how do you do that? You make a big splash. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. Your text messages, keep them coming. 609-403-0973. Bryce Harper has a suggestion that would be overwhelmingly popular. That's next. This is the Sports Bash.
It's drive into summer with the Honda CR-V and Accord, your fun-to-drive weekend getaway vehicles. From Honda, the 2024 Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com Best Value brand. So hurry in to the Honda Summer Event. For a limited time, well-qualified buyers can get a 2.9% APR on a 2025 CR-V or 2024 Accord.
See dealer for financing details based on 2024 Consumer Choice Awards from Kelley Blue Book. Visit KBB.com for more information.
With Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Let me tell you.
2:53 Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Did you hear what Mason Miller said his biggest excitement at the All-Star game has been so far? He said it was riding the plane with Bryce Harper and Bryce Harper introducing himself to him.
Bryce Harper's such a big star that all other All-Stars are excited to meet him.
Well, start the speculation. You know, the story was out yesterday that Mason Miller flew to the All-Star game.
With the Phillies.
So you had the 8 Phillies players.
Plus the A's closer.
And the A's closer, Mason Miller. But Bryce Harper's best suggestion at the All-Star game so far has been overwhelmingly popular with the fans. Bryce Harper says, go back to players wearing the uniforms of their respective teams in the Midsummer Classic. And it's been well received possibly by Commissioner of Major League Baseball. And, of course, he doesn't get anything right generally, but could be a popular decision. Could be a popular decision that we could see coming back.
Yeah, the Phillies players purposely took a picture together in their Phillies uniforms yesterday to kind of be like, we're Phillies.
Hey, coming up in the 3 o'clock hour, by the way, Nick Nurse on Sirius XM NBA radio making comments about Paul George that stood out a little bit. Plus, when we come back, it's the Phillies mailbag with Frank Close from 97.3 ESPN.com giving you his thoughts on answering, or he answers your Phillies questions. And that's coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live and be a part of the show. We'll see you on the other side with Frank Close with your Phillies mailbag questions.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Hour 2 of the Sports Bash live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Frank Close covers the Phillies for 97.3 ESPN.com. All-Star game tonight, 3 Phillies in the starting lineup. Trey Turner hits 3rd, Bryce Harper hits 4th, Alec Bohm hits 7th, and that is brought to you by our friends over at Clark's Moving and Storage in Rio Grande. We've got the All-Star game tonight on 97.3 ESPN. All right, let's get into the Phillies mailbag with Frank Close. And a lot of questions at the All-Star break. Of course, a lot of people thinking big picture here, Frank, as the Phillies, at the All-Star break. 8 Phillies at the All-Star game. That's a record, although Suarez and Wheeler will not perform in the game tonight, but there will be those 3 starters in there. We'll see if Sanchez and Strahm and Hoffman end up in the game as well. But, man, what'd you think of the Derby last night? Very long.
Yes, it's a little long. I honestly can't keep track of all the rule changes over the years. So it's, I did like that they all got to hit what they hit the first round and then went into the brackets. I did think that was a little bit better, but yeah, it was indeed a little long. And I'll be very honest, after Bohm was eliminated, I did not stick around for the rest.
Yeah, you and me both. I agree. I like that, take the most and then put them into brackets. But, I mean, the 3 minutes or the 40 pitches, it's too much. It's ridiculous. The timeouts. Shorter's better. 1 minute. Who can hit the most home runs in a minute and a half? How about that? A minute and a half, you get to hit home runs. No timeouts. Bang, just go through. See how many home runs you hit. You move to the next round. Mano a mano. Bang. You could shorten that thing by an hour and a half, probably. I mean, for Alec Bohm not to hit for an hour and 45 minutes was ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree with that. That was quite the long layover, and I definitely think he was at a disadvantage at that point. I know they let him bat first because I guess he was kind of projected to be the least likely to win, but he really had to wait that out. And so you got to wonder if his timing was affected. Didn't seem to, hitting 14 in that second round.
No, I mean, I liked his opportunity to win it mainly because it reminds me a lot like Bobby Abreu was not a home run hitter. He was a doubles hitter. He was a very pure hitter. But when he had that swing and it was going, he crushed a bunch of them in Comerica Park. So I thought if Bohm could get hot with his swing, that he could just launch a bunch. We saw him hit 21 in the first round and kind of move on from there. But, I thought it was way too long. It was good to see Bohm kind of handle himself. He hit 14 in the second round, then he lost the swing off, but it was way too long. Bryce Harper makes the recommendation to go back to wearing the team uniforms in the All-Star game, and it looks like Rob Manfred might be listening to it.
I think that's a good idea. I look back at some of the old memories of some of the old All-Star games. In fact, I was just looking up 1989 because I was just thinking about how Mike Schmidt was announced along with the lineup because he had retired and was elected in or voted in by the fans. So they brought him out after the lineup was announced, but yeah, it was kind of neat seeing everybody in their own uniforms, and I actually like the hats too, being their actual team hats. I don't love the All-Star hats either. It'd be nice to just see them in their full uniforms. I think it's pretty cool that Bryce Harper made sure they got that picture in their full Phillies uniforms.
Well, like that, I said, look, if you're going to continue to make every team have a representative, then you got to put them in their uniforms. I don't know who Ryan McMahon is, and I don't know what team he plays for. So what am I benefiting if I'm a fan? I don't know who the guy is, and I don't know what team he plays for if he's not wearing his uniform. It does a disservice to the team and the player.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ryan McMahon is the third baseman for the Colorado Rockies.
Yes.
To everybody listening who does not know, but yeah, you're right. It'd be nice for casual fans around the league to know who these players are, who they play for, and then maybe that gives them something to watch. I mean, how many teams will face the Rockies and think, I really don't know anybody on that team? Because right now, honestly, they really don't even have that many vets that you might have any other than Charlie Blackmon, who's really a shell of his old self. But, it'd be nice to say, oh, cool, Ryan McMahon's on that team. So really good point you make right there.
I like Greg's question as we get into the mailbag here. He says, forget the right-handed bat, forget the relief pitcher that everybody wants at the deadline. Can we count on Ranger Suarez to figure things out before he goes back to the guy that goes 7+ and gives us quality starts over and over again? The last 3 outings have been an ominous sign going forward. I think that's a good question. Can Ranger Suarez be the guy he was in the first half in the second half?
Ranger Suarez has been diagnosed with either tightness in his back or back spasms. I've heard both terms used. And let's not forget, Zach Wheeler was also dealing with the same thing. And I think when you have issues like that, what you need from that situation is just some simple rest. And as you said, Suarez did not take up that opportunity to pitch in the All-Star game. Neither did Wheeler. In fact, neither of them actually went. So they're taking the advantage of this time to rest their backs. And it looks like the Phillies are going to give them both next weekend as well. So when they set up the rotation coming out of the break in Pittsburgh, it looks like they're going to wait till the Minnesota series, which is the next series after the weekend, to pitch Suarez and Wheeler. So the hope is that if you give them that rest, not pitching every 5th day, they get this nice long week. In fact, Wheeler, of course, did not make his start on Sunday. And that's a decent amount of rest. They're hoping they'll come out of it, a little bit stronger than they had shown. Both of them really. Both of them didn't have their best stuff the last few outings. So, it's a long season. In fact, I remember a while ago, Mike, when the Phillies were probably at their peak winning percentage. You were talking about the over and under for wins, and some people were saying, oh, they'll win 105 now. And I said, well, no, maybe we got to look closer to like 95, because stuff like this happens in a long season. You get banged up a little bit, you get a little tired, your back starts to bother you. And so I think this is good that they get this break. They get next weekend off as well, and you want to hope that they will come back refreshed. Now, I will add, though, I would like to see some more starting pitching depth on this team. We have no date yet as to when Taijuan Walker is going to be coming back or progressing along. We very, very little information we've got about him, but it doesn't sound like they're going to rush him. So you need some starting pitching depth. We saw Sunday. Michael Mercado probably is not an answer in the rotation. Got a nice start out of Tyler Phillips. Is he going to keep that up? Or is he getting some first time around the league luck, as they used to call it? So I think they really need to add a starting pitcher at some point. I don't think they need to be an ace pitcher by any means, but I think you're going to need somebody there that can eat innings at the back end, just making sure that you don't let the bullpen overwork. Because usually when your starting pitching fails, then your bullpen's going to get overworked, and then the whole thing kind of comes apart.
Well, let's keep in mind, too, Michael Mercado had one good start, and we were like, wow, look at this guy. And then those last 2 outings have been 3 home runs against Oakland, 3 home runs against the Braves. So it looks like don't get too excited about Tyler Phillips, but we'll see. I would imagine he's going to get another start after the All-Star break here.
Yeah, I would bet he starts in Pittsburgh. We'll have to see how they pitch them at the All-Star game, but, Nola, Sanchez and Phillips in some order, depending on how the game goes, I would expect to see this weekend in Pittsburgh.
Yep. And then, of course, one of the things, too, that a lot of people, you look at Suarez. Sanchez is another guy. Can he keep up what he did in the first half, in the second half? I mean, he was an all-star. He just got added to the all-star team, but he pitched outstanding. You got a lot of guys. Matt Strahm has pitched way better than he's ever pitched before. Jeff Hoffman has pitched way better than he ever had before. There's a lot of things contributing to the Phillies having the best record in baseball, but you have to ask yourself, can those guys do it again over a long season? That really separates good players from like all-star players, because guys make the all-star game because they had good one half of the season, but the really elite players are able to do it over both halves of the season.
Very, very true. And I think we should give a lot of credit to Caleb Cotham and Brian Kaplan, who are really the architect of this pitching staff, and they've done a really good job getting the most out of these players. And I think we can't overlook their coaching process. Cotham is more the hands-on type, Kaplan more the philosophical end, but they've done a heck of a job with these Phillies pitchers getting the most out of them.
All right, Frank Close's Phillies mailbag is up at 973ESPN.com. Let's get into question number 2. It has to do with the Derby last night. Zach wants to know, now watching Bohm in the Derby, does that open up Bohm's power swing? Should we expect more homers from Bohm? We know it's in there. Everybody has speculated over the last couple of years, Frank, like this guy can hit 25, 30 home runs. He's not really shown us that in live games. He's more of a 22 home run guy. He's more of a doubles guy. But can he be a guy, or should he? Would you want to see him be a guy that hits more homers?
I do not think he needs to change anything. It's kind of funny. I said to my friends, one of my good friends is a big Alec Bohm fan, and going in, I was like, he's going to hit a bunch of line drives to the gap. And really, that's what he did. Now, he was really good. He got a lot of them over the wall. But, when you talk about quote-unquote power, a lot of that is what they can slug. If you look at his slugging percentage, it's .482, which is very, very good. And that is those 33 doubles he has, that 1 triple he has, right? So he's kind of showing power, but it's not in the home run sense. And what I really liked about yesterday was Bohm didn't really change who he was in his swing. Yeah, he was looking to hit home runs because that's the whole point of yesterday. But I still saw that line drive gap hitter at the plate there. And I think that's really important. You mentioned Bobby Abreu a little while ago. When you think back to 2005, I remember you mentioned Comerica Park. I thought that short porch in right field, he was primed to win that. But then afterwards, if you look at his numbers from before to after that home run derby, Abreu hit 307 before the derby. He hit 260 after the derby. He had 18 home runs before the derby and only 6 after the derby. So some guys, if you look throughout, derby to derby, there's a lot of players that it really messes with their swing. And, Abreu is kind of seen as one of the obvious ones in Phillies history that might have messed with his swing, so to speak. I think Bohm is going to be the player he was coming out of this as he was going in. And I think that's really what this team can use. I mean, he's driving the ball. He's driving in runs. I don't think you can worry about the ball going over the fence when he's giving you that much production.
Yeah, I know that you just mentioned with Bobby Abreu, some people always worry, if you enter the derbies, they're going to mess with your swing. Bohm is certainly a guy you hope that he doesn't get his swing messed up. He's got a great gap to gap. I think one of the reasons why, though, he's been such a great hitter is his approach is just his approach is one of, I don't need to hit a home run. I can hit a double. Whereas so many guys want to hit for power. They want to hit those home runs, and they end up striking out.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. If you think back to the mid-2000s, you had Abreu win the one year, Howard won the next year, and then Chase Utley tried the year after that, and Utley just was not hitting home runs. He just went up there and was Chase Utley, which was not that type of hitter. So I think if you try to be something you're not, that really indeed can mess with your game. So I like Alec Bohm the way he is. I think he serves the Phillies very, very well the way he is. And I was glad to see that he didn't seem to change up too much going into that home run derby.
If you have a question for Frank, you can text it in at 609-403-0973 to our text board. We'll try to fit in a couple of more text messages at the All-Star break, 609-403-0973. But I think this one is an interesting question. Do you think there's a player or package that the Phillies could acquire? Rooker, Mason, they've mentioned some names that obviously I don't want to get your thoughts on those two who were just in Philadelphia. But it would include players like Sanchez or Painter or say a Rojas. Would the Phillies do it? We talked about this earlier. Is there players on the big league roster? I know Painter is not. Other than, is there anybody on the big league roster that they could use in a trade to upgrade the team with a player like a Rooker or a Mason Miller? In other words, is there a trade to be made that wouldn't include their top-end prospects?
Yeah, I don't think anybody is coming off the major league roster, at least in terms of the core pieces. Now, might a Christian Pache go back to somebody who just needs to stuff somebody in left field and man the position? Maybe. But in terms of really the core players on this team, I really don't see anything where the Phillies trade somebody off the major league roster. Certainly not Christopher Sanchez. I don't think they see him as a prospect at this point.
He just signed a big deal too, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. He signed a deal to be in Philadelphia. I think he's going to stay put, and I think they're going to look to trade not even their top prospects either. So then I guess you ask the question, like, okay, well, if they're not going to trade the top prospects, they're not going to trade somebody off the major league roster. Well, who then? Well, if you look lately the last few years, you've gotten a lot of value in trades from the people that might be your number 4 to 5 on in terms of their prospect lists. Teams are valuing their top prospects with a very high price tag. And, you know, the super premium players that might be traded, they do want those players back. Now, I don't think the Phillies are shopping for any of those superstar type players that might be moved. I mean, there's really not that many that might be moved. You know, you hear Jazz Chisholm a lot, for example. I don't think that the Phillies are interested from everything I've read. You know, the big thing being he's a left-handed hitter and the Phillies are looking for a right-handed hitter. But I think the Phillies are going to be shopping for those types of right-handed bats that fill the need the Phillies have. Which is really just to play better against lefties. And to do so, I think you can find a nice outfield platoon bat that you can play in left field that will get some good at bats against left-handed pitching. You'll want Rojas to be around to platoon with Brandon Marsh in center if that's what happens. So I think when you look at the needs the Phillies have, you can probably fill those without giving up your Andrew Painters, without giving up Aiden Miller, without giving up maybe even Justin Crawford. He's not somebody that I would consider untouchable personally, but I don't think you need to give him up. You look at the likes of Mick Abel. Might they trade him? Maybe, but his value is kind of down right now, I would say, based upon his performance at AAA. So I don't think the Phillies need to shop in that aisle that will cost them their top prospects to do what they need, which is really supplement what they have, which is very good. Again, maybe an extra starter, definitely a right-handed bat for the outfield, but picking up a platoon bat per se might not be that expensive.
Here was what Jim Duquette, former GM, said on our show yesterday. Let me get your thoughts on his reaction here. Let me get your thought on his reacting to what he said here yesterday.
I think corner outfield, right? Like, all right, I'll give you a name that has popped up, like a Mark Canha with Detroit, right? Not an overall sexy name, but he would fit perfectly there. He has a great idea of the strike zone, can play multiple outfield positions. He could play left. Outside, he could play a little bit of center field. He could also play right if you needed him to. The right-handed bat, but he hits righties. Like that type of guy, he's one guy that I think would be a really good fit. I wouldn't be surprised if they're in on.
All right, former MLB GM Jim Duquette from MLB Network Radio, Mark Canha. I don't know that that's going to excite a lot of people listening.
I like Mark Canha. One thing I would note is he kind of has a little bit of a wrist issue right now that they're taking some time off from him playing to look at. But yeah, I think that's the right type of profile. In fact, when the Phillies lost Schwarber and Harper on the same day, I thought he was somebody that might have been good to, if you could get him in the immediate, because he could play first base. He could play some left field. So, if he's healthy in a couple weeks and they're satisfied with that, I mean, he might be a nice pickup. Now, I know a lot of the buzz, Phillies fans sure saw, Rooker over the weekend. But Brent Rooker, that was a name that came up kind of when he was still kind of anonymous out there, but after the weekend he had, I'm sure he's only increasing his value in a trade. But someone like Rooker, kind of a starting designated hitter, I kind of worry about his defense. If you shove him in left field, it could be like shoving Kyle Schwarber in left field. As we said with Rhys Hoskins last year, you really only got room for one of those, all bat, no glove types. And so I would be a little cautious. I think if you are confident that he can not totally butcher left field, maybe you consider a Rooker, but I think the Canha type is the type that the Phillies will be looking for. Hits lefties well, can play some left field, another position's nice. And I just don't know that, they need to break the bank for a player like that. But Canha is a really good idea.
Well, let me get your thoughts on that, because last year they got a guy like Michael Lorenzen, who was an all-star, and he threw a no-hitter, and he didn't help them at all. I mean, he did not appear in a playoff game, to my memory. He may have thrown, I don't even know if he was on the roster for the wild card. Did they learn their lesson from that, though? Like, hey, we can't just get a bit player or a part-time player. If we're going to make a move to help us win a World Series, it's going to have to be someone who's legitimately going to help us.
Yeah, I think the Phillies' need is so specific. When you look at Dave Dombrowski's history, finding the platoon player that's going to hit well against lefties or righties, that has served him well in the past. A little bit different than the pitching situation. The last couple of years, he added a starter. Both times, they didn't really think. In fact, even last year, Lorenzen, the thought was that by the end of the year, he would be in the bullpen. I mean, I think for this offensive position, I think this is a situation where if you get the right bat that can hit lefties well, it can be a platoon type, and you won't really feel that loss. Brandon Marsh, unfortunately, does not hit left-handed pitching. And of course, other players, when you have Marsh and Rojas in the lineup, or if you had Pache and Rojas in the lineup against lefties, they're still not getting much production. So they really need something. Now, getting JT Realmuto back soon, which I believe is still on track for this weekend in Pittsburgh, that will help the Phillies a lot. But they really need an extra right-handed bat, because lately they've just had Nick Castellanos to hit a left-handed pitcher, and that's been a problem. So I think a platoon bat like a Canna does solve that problem.
Well, we'll see. Obviously, they're going to be in talks with a lot of teams, and we'll see if they go big game hunting, bit player, or something else here. And, of course, we'll have it in the mailbag here. Here's an interesting question that came in from the mailbag. Dan in EHT says, are the Phillies built more for the regular season or a postseason run?
I think the playoffs, for sure. Because, as we saw in 2022, your best half of your roster is what's going to get you to the World Series, right? But I do caution against taking for granted like a fifth spot in the rotation, because you can't burn those innings. One of the reasons the Phillies bullpen is so darn good this year is they haven't had to fill a lot of innings. Last couple of days they had to fill a bunch of innings. I think it was evident in how some of the pitchers performed. Just having Seranthony out there for way too long because they had to throw a lot of innings on Sunday. Well, you saw what you got out of it, right? So. But I think for the most part, the Dave Dombrowski thinks with the playoffs in mind. When I get to the postseason, what's going to win? And really, it's those top three pitchers usually is what leads the way, and the offense. And the Phillies have built their offense with a lot of big name money, and they have now 4 starters that you feel pretty good about going into the playoffs, which is not something they had the last couple of years.
Yeah, you could maybe say both. They're built for both this year. I mean, they're going to win possibly 100 games. But they're also built for the playoffs with 4 all-star caliber starting pitchers in the top end of their lineup with 1, 2, 3 starters in the all-star game. They might be built for both for this particular season. Much different than the Braves and the Dodgers, who have very deep lineups that can score a bunch of runs on Tuesday night against bad pitching staff. Their problem is the depth of their pitching staff, not playoff worthy.
Yeah, the Dodgers, the Phillies caught them when they had some arms down, but like Glasnow had an injury history. Clayton Kershaw, they signed him really not knowing what they would get out of him. So, and of course, Yamamoto, the free agent signing, hasn't pitched in the United States yet. I mean, the Dodgers rolled the dice, so you knew they were going to expose themselves at certain times, and you kind of saw in the Philly series, that could be their heel. I mean, certainly being without Buehler is a big deal if you're the Dodgers. So, it's really hard to find pitching and keep it healthy. And that's part of the reason I give the Phillies such kudos, because that pitching management that they have between Kaplan and Cotham, these Phillies pitchers have been mostly healthy. And they had the Walker injury and these little minor things a couple times, but keeping your staff healthy is really, really important.
All right, Frank Close, 97.3 ESPN.com. The Phillies will start this weekend in Pittsburgh at PNC Park. Aaron Nola will start for the Phils. No other pitchers have been announced yet for either teams. We'll see if we say Paul Skeens. Do you think he'll pitch this weekend against the Phillies?
Well, he's starting the game tonight, so that might have him back by Sunday, I think. So you might have a shot to see him on Sunday.
All right, we'll keep our eyes out for that. Skeens tonight in the All-Star game, and you can listen to the All-Star game right here on 97.3 ESPN, and get Frank's mailbag next Tuesday right here on the Sports Bash. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, Frank Close, everybody, from 97.3 ESPN.com here on the Sports Bash. And, of course, the Phillies tonight They'll have 3 guys in the starting lineup. Bryce Harper, by the way, just showed up at the All-Star game wearing a cowboy hat, boots. I mean, he said you got to play the part, whatever city you're in. Now, does that upset you at all? Does he pander to the Philly fans so much that he's just actually not genuine? We had the bottle last night of water. They had the bottle with the water written WOODER on it. But does him showing up and saying that, hey, whatever town you're in, you gotta act, you gotta get into the culture of the town. Is he just pandering to all the people now? I don't know how I feel about that, Bryce Harper. I thought you were our guy. Should have showed up today at the All-Star game wearing a Wawa t-shirt or something like that. Instead, he showed up with a cowboy hat, a belt buckle, and cowboy boots. More Sports Bash coming up, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Paul Skeens will start the game tonight. That's next.
You're listening.
Drive into summer with the Honda CR-V and Accord, your fun-to-drive, weekend getaway vehicles. From Honda, the 2024 Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com Best Value brand. So hurry in to the Honda Summer Event. For a limited time, well-qualified buyers can get a 2.9% APR on a 2025 CR-V or 2024 Accord.
See dealer for financing details based on 2024 Consumer Choice Awards from Kelley Blue Book. Visit KBB.com for more information.
With Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
All right, welcome back. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SBLive. Major League Baseball All-Star Game tonight. Paul Skeens is the starter. That's a story in itself. It's something we really haven't seen, is a guy with 11 starts making the start at the All-Star Game. Are there other worthy candidates? Sure. But why Paul Skeens? He's really turned into a phenomenon. And it's an interesting dynamic here because he is a guy who, by the way, is awesome. All right, if you haven't seen Skeens pitch, he's dominant. I mean, he's 100 miles an hour. He's just dominating the league right now. He's had 2 starts that have been cut short in which he had no hitters. They pulled him because of basically pitch count. And he's going to start the All-Star game tonight, which I think is a good decision. He is deserving for his numbers. It's not like the guy stinks. It's not like the guy is, 6-2 with a 2.50 ERA. No. This guy has been outstanding. He is right now 6-0 with an ERA of 1.90, a whip of 0.92, and has been completely dominant. In 66 innings pitched, he has 89 strikeouts. I mean, he has 12 strikeouts per 9. It's ridiculous. I mean, relief pitchers don't get 12 strikeouts per 9. This guy's a starting pitcher, and he's doing it. So I'm all for this guy starting. But I think the big question becomes, moving forward, what kind of pitcher can Skeens be in the grand scheme of things? If they're pulling him from starts, can he really be an all-time great? What is an all-time great? What will the next wave of all-time greats actually be? If you're constantly being compared to your contemporaries and your predecessors, and you can't duplicate what your predecessors did because of the people making decisions for you, can you ever surpass them? How could Paul Skeens ever be better than Nolan Ryan or Roger Clemens or Pedro Martinez or any other right-handed power pitcher that we've all grew up watching? The decisions that are being made are not fair to the legacies of these pitchers. David Sampson from the Nothing Personal podcast, a podcast that I really enjoy, I listen all the time, brought up an interesting topic today. And it has to do with what happened on the, was it Wednesday, the day that Skeens pitched and got pulled?
Thursday.
He has a no-hitter. He's got 99 pitches, and they pull him. Okay? Sampson brought it up on Friday's edition of Nothing Personal. Here's what he said.
There has never been a doctor in my entire career who's been able to tell me we have got the correlation nailed. Do this, and your guys won't get hurt.
So the correlation that he's talking about is the correlation between pitch count. Here's a guy who worked in a major league. He said, I want to tell you a little secret, right? There's no correlation to if a guy throws 100 pitches, he's going to get hurt. And if a guy throws 40 pitches, he's not going to get hurt. He said no doctor has ever had a correlation there. So he explains that there is no evidence of why these pitchers are being basically held back.
We've heard the analytics say we don't want our pitcher going 3 times through the lineup, specific to a pitcher. Never have we heard analytics. Never have we heard doctors. We've only heard GMs scared for their lives, owners not wanting performing major league players to get Tommy John when they're cheap, and Skeens is cheap.
There's an interesting point there. 2 interesting points he brings up. We have no correlation of pitch count preventing injuries. Okay? But he said what we do have a correlation is, and we might not like this, is the analytics that say if you face the lineup for the 3rd time, that possibly your numbers will decrease. You won't be as good against the lineup for a 3rd time. So I was thinking about this when I listened to this podcast the other day. I said, man, that is really interesting. Okay, so where did pitch count come from? Who just decided that pitch count was the way that we were going to determine whether or not a pitcher should continue to go? Is it pitch count or is it analytics? Which one is it? So when I listened to the podcast, I said, I feel bad for a guy like Skeens, and I feel bad for a young pitcher in general. Like he said, he actually went on in the podcast, and he said, little secret here is, I don't like that Skeens is even up and pitching for the Pirates. And his reasoning was, you're losing a controllable year of a guy in a year that you don't have a chance to win a World Series, which might not be accurate, by the way. The Pirates only a game and a half out of the World Series. But he's saying, look, they're not good enough to win the World Series, and you're wasting one of his arbitration years right now when you don't need to. He thinks they brought him up actually too early, and if you're not going to let him basically pitch, you should have just left him down. So the whole story becomes the manager of the Pirates was asked after the game, what happened? Why did you pull him out? And he never mentioned pitch count. Nope. He mentioned that he looked tired, to which Sampson said, when? He threw 7 pitches in the 7th inning to get out of the inning. When in those 7 pitches did he look tired? He's mowing people down. And at no point did Paul Skeens say that he was tired. At no point did Skeens say, yeah, I was kind of wearing down. I was tired. It was time for me to come out of the game. So I feel like this All-Star game tonight is a really interesting dynamic. With Skeens pitching, he is, I don't want to say a mega star, but he's the starting pitcher of the All-Star game. He's got this girlfriend that everybody knows, and he has become a social media darling. Baseball trying to capitalize off his popularity. They start him in the All-Star game. But can you imagine this guy is rookie phenom sensation, 6-0, 190 ERA. His ERA would be better if they let him keep pitching, because if he threw 2 no-hitters, can you imagine if he's entering this game right now with 2 no-nos? The problem with Skeens is people are wondering whether he should start the game because most people don't never even heard of the guy. You may have heard of him if you are uberly a fan of baseball. But if you're not, you don't even know who the guy is. Why? Because he threw 99 pitches and they decided that's enough? I think what Sampson says is very interesting because this has never really been brought up or fought or questioned or pushed or pried. Why is 99 pitches the number? Why is 100 pitches the number? He said there is no correlation. No doctor has ever said, well, if you throw 110, you might be in peril. If you throw 50, you're okay. He's saying, no, there are pitchers who throw 40 and their arm can't hold up. And there's others who throw 120 and they're fine. There is no correlation. So Skeens should not be treated like everybody else. You can't treat every single person and pitcher the same. And Major League Baseball and the Pittsburgh Pirates are doing their fans a disservice if they are treating Paul Skeens like some other jamoke. He's not some other idiot. He's the best thing you have. So at 99 pitches, if he's throwing a no-hitter, you better be damn sure that he gets the chance to close that out. You remember how popular Fernando was? Why? Why was Fernando Venezuela so popular? The guy threw like 5 shutouts in his first 8 starts or something ridiculous like that. Fernando Mania took over baseball. Everybody knew who he was because he was allowed to do what he did best. At 99, 110, 120. Sampson's reasoning is interesting. It's not doctor related. It's GM related. In other words, the GM wants the kid to be healthy because he needs him to be healthy for his job. And in his mind, how do I keep him healthy? I restrict the amount of times he pitches. It's a flawed concept. There is no medical evidence of it. I say often, you get one guy throws 110 pitches one day a week, and then he doesn't throw again. Is better than the same guy throwing 45 pitches on one day, 45 pitches the next day, 45 pitches 2 days later. Because now, essentially, he's thrown over 110 pitches in a 3-day span. So just throw 110 one day and then call it a week. But the society has created all these, weekend tournaments where you got to throw the guy 45, 45, 45, 45, instead of just saying, hey, go out there, throw your 110 pitches or whatever the limit may be, and build yourself up and become a guy that can pitch. Paul Skeens hasn't been given that opportunity, and he's a professional. The Pirates had the opportunity. And look, is it the Pirates' duty to create a superstar? Not necessarily, but guess what? You are an irrelevant franchise, completely irrelevant, who cries the small market blues. You have the opportunity to finally get your piece of the proverbial pie by having a superstar. Please treat him right. Don't treat him like some other idiot by pulling him at 99 pitches. Let him be the superstar that he deserves to be, not only for your team, the Pittsburgh Pirates, but for his legacy as well. Because the generation of fans right now deserve to be watching all-time greats. And the way these games are being managed and the way organizations handle these players, we're not getting the opportunity to see all-time greats because you're limiting their exposure. The only people that are getting hurt are today's players. They're constantly getting compared to the players of the past, and the players of the past numbers are always going to be better. Why? Because they didn't have these ridiculous pitch restrictions on them. So Paul Skeens never gets the opportunity to measure up to Roger Clemens. He never gets the opportunity to say, hey, I pitch as much as Pedro Martinez. If you keep pulling me out in the 7th inning of a no-hitter, how can I add that to my resume? It's not fair for Skeens. It's not fair for the fans. And the Pirates, you have nothing else going for you. What are you doing? Let Skeens be the face of your franchise. Not only the face of your franchise, let Skeens become the face of the league. The Pirates could use it. I mean, for God's sakes. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. It's a Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform. At Mike Gill Show, use the hashtag SB Live. I looked at this, I listened to this podcast, and when he said this, it just jumped off at me. Here's a guy who worked in Major League Baseball. He's a team president, and he said, there is no doctor evidence of this, but these general managers are so worried about their job and the payrolls and keeping these guys down. They don't want to pay them. And they certainly don't want to pay them before they have to pay them, and they certainly don't want their clocks to tick before the team needs them. The Pirates, though, are in a playoff chase right now. Why? Because they made the smart decision by calling Skeens up. That's 6 extra wins that they have, that he pitched on those days. And guess what? Those 6 extra wins have them a game and a half out of the wild card. Now, who knows what would happen on the days when he pitched, if someone else pitched in those times. He pitched 11 games. He is 6-0. So I don't know what their record is in games that he started, but he has at least 6 wins for them. So if you take those 6 wins and flip them around because some other idiot pitched, the Pirates are now hanging out with the Rockies instead of the Braves. That's how important he has been to the organization. Think about it. 609-403-0973. You know, we talk about 300-game winners and all the accolades that the true greats have. What are the players of today going to get to rest their laurels on? What are the players of today going to get to say, hey, I accomplished that guy did as well, and I surpassed him? I don't know that that's ever going to happen. Right? I don't know that that's ever going to happen. I mean, outside of, you can remember the Kerry Wood 20 strikeout game. You can remember Roger Clemens 20 strikeout games. You can remember those things. You can remember Fernando Mania. I mean, he took over the league, Fernando, as a rookie. He came in and took over the league.
Pirates have won 8 of Skeens' 11 starts. 2 of the 3 losses were blown by the bullpen.
8 of the starts. They are 48-48 right now. So you take 8 away, and they are 40-62, which is not good. That would put them back by Colorado.
But the other point about Skeens is that they let him pitch. You could argue they would have 2 more wins in the win column.
And guess what? If they had 2 more wins right now, they'd be a playoff team. So you've now hurt him.
Right.
You've hurt your team, and you've hurt your fan base. The Pirates are really screwing their fans.
Yeah, Hunter Stratton allowed 5 runs in the 1 loss to the Giants.
It's really disappointing. Baseball, be better, do better, and do better for your fans. All right, coming up, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. We got football at 4 on the way. Jeff Mosher will join us. We'll get his thoughts on how much pressure's on Jalen Hurts this season. On the other side, Charles Barkley weighs in on why he would bet the Eagles to win the Super Bowl. That's next. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Drive into summer with the Honda CR-V and Accord, your fun-to-drive weekend getaway vehicles. From Honda, the 2024 Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com Best Value brand. So hurry in to the Honda Summer Event. For a limited time, well-qualified buyers can get a 2.9% APR on a 2025 CR-V or 2024 Accord.
See dealer for financing details based on 2024 Consumer Choice Awards from Kelley Blue Book. Visit KBB.com for more information.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
What's the better bet? Phillies winning the World Series or the Eagles winning the Super Bowl? Which one you taking?
Eagles winning the Super Bowl. They got all the pieces. Obviously got to replace Fletcher and Jason, but they had a great draft, and they still got most of the players they've had the last couple of years when they made that Super Bowl run. So, in my opinion, I'm picking the Eagles to win the Super Bowl.
That was Charles Barkley on the Takeoff podcast with John Clark. He says, who's the better bet to win? The Eagles, Super Bowl, Phillies, World Series. He said it's the Eagles, and he's actually picking the Eagles to win the Super Bowl. Bold prediction, Charles Barkley. Is he wrong?
I don't think he's wrong because I think the odds are more in your favor to win a Super Bowl than it is a World Series. I think that the World Series is a very hard thing to survive the postseason.
Yeah, it's a crapshoot in baseball because of the 7-game series. It's a one-on-one one-game elimination in football. You win, you move on. You win, you move on. You win, you move on. Baseball, you could be up 2-0 in a series, and then, as we saw last year, get 2 games at home and not be able to win that series. So I do think the betting odds were probably better for the Eagles to win the Super Bowl over. I don't know what they are right now, but they should be close. I think the Eagles like 550, plus 550, and the Phillies might be somewhere like around plus 600 to win the World Series, somewhere in that range. When we come back, football at 4 is on the way. Adam Kaplan. How much pressure is on Jalen Hurts this season? That's next. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show.
Jersey, 97.3 ESPN presents the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Kaplan, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
I give my heart and soul to this franchise, as so many of us do.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Adam Kaplan is here today, and we'll take a look at his quarterback rankings, as many people talking about QB rankings, executives, scouts, front office members put out their top 10 yesterday in an article over at ESPN.com. And now Adam has his own criteria and his own quarterback rankings, which we're going to dive in today on the Sports Bash Live. I'm looking forward to this list. We had a fun time breaking down that list yesterday. I'm looking forward to what Adam has on his list. And don't forget the Inside the Birds podcast you can get on all podcasting platforms and their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds as we bring in Adam Kaplan here on a Sports Bash Tuesday edition. Adam, how are you, sir?
I'm good. You know what's interesting? A couple things here. First of all, because of this piece came out at ESPN.com, and I didn't know this, so why I knew about it yesterday, but I didn't know about it that it was coming out last week, because Jeremy Fowler, the guy who wrote the piece, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I was with Fowler at a charity event in Connecticut. And it's funny, we didn't talk about this. Had I known about it, I would have asked him about it, you know? So I used to work with Jeremy at ESPN. It's just kind of funny. Just happened to be with a guy last Friday. But, in fact, this thing has become sort of the hot take story on social media, because camps are just opening. Most are not open. So there's not a ton to talk about. So people have been talking about it. Now, it's really funny. If you would have put these rankings together and not had Hurts in your top 7 after the 22 season, people say, what's wrong with you? You're biased. Well, you notice, Mike, and I check this out on social media a lot, message boards and Facebook and so forth, a lot of the Hurts people are not quite defending him like they used to be. I find it interesting since these rankings came out.
Yeah, by the way, the ESPN rankings, he did not land in the top 10, and we'll see where you have him ranked on your list. Adam Kaplan, your quarterback rankings, give us some criteria on what you're looking for.
All right, this is based solely on talking to NFL executives. John DeFilippo, the Eagles' former quarterback coach they won a Super Bowl with, who worked with us last season there on our Patreon, and he's going to be back with us occasionally on Patreon, so we look forward to getting John back. He's really taught me the quarterback position. Here are a lot of the things that he uses and others have used over the years and have given me personnel people of what they look for in quarterback. Size, obviously, you want a guy 6'2" or higher. Athleticism, you want a guy, if the pocket breaks down, you want him to be able to have second reaction movement, make the plays on the run when it gets flushed out. And your offensive line, Mike, won't play great every play. You got to be able to move. Arm strength. It's not good, though. It's great to have arm strength. It hurts, by the way, you spoke of Hurts, and we'll get to him later. He has arm strength better than you think. But it doesn't, like what we've learned through arm strength is, remember Kyle Boller, the first-round pick with Baltimore? It didn't matter about his arm strength because his accuracy was so bad, he wound up being a terrible first-round pick. So if you don't have accuracy with arm strength, it doesn't matter. This is a big one, number 5, the ability to execute. Speaking of Hurts, show me a quarterback in 2022 who executed better. Here's the play, run it. Last season he did not. He moved too much. He just didn't execute the plays, and I'm not saying the coaching was great, and the scheme was not great. It needed to be adjusted. But Hurts clearly regressed. It's not an arguable point. The tape showed it. He's got to bounce back. Coachability is another one. That's the willingness to be coached. Hard coaching. This is what John DeFilippo did great with with Wentz in 2016 and 2017 in particular. You got to want to be coached. If you don't want to be coach, you're not going to be a good quarterback, or eventually you're going to fizzle out. FBI, that's called functional football intelligence. You don't have to have a very high IQ or pass in these intelligence tests. Dan Marino's Hall of Famer. He had a very low Wonderlic score. The Wonderlic scores doesn't matter. You just have to be able to execute the play. And if you've got good enough functional football intelligence, you could succeed at the next level. Durability, obviously. Are you available to play? Football character. Are you a good teammate? Do you do what you're supposed to do? Are you there as a quarterback first? Are you the first one to be there, last one to leave? And leadership. Your quarterback better be the leader of their offense. If he's not, that's a problem.
All right, so there's a lot there. Obviously, this is coming from John DeFilippo. There's 10 criteria factors.
Not just him, though. Not just him. A lot of guys, but a lot from John.
Right.
Yep.
But taking that from a guy who's been a quarterback coach in the league, that's 10 different qualities that they're looking for to find a successful quarterback to play in this league. I guess this is why there's so few successful quarterbacks in this league, right?
John, it's funny, Mike, us talk about this. I wish we had an hour to talk about this, because I could give you everything. I have to give you basically Cliff Notes versions of each player, and we only got like 30 seconds per player. So let's get started, and obviously Patrick Mahomes is number one. He's going for his fourth Super Bowl. He's not even 29 yet, and he's going for his third Super Bowl in a row, which, by the way, would be NFL record. No team has ever won 3 in a row. You know what's really underrated? I've heard Andy Reid say this, how smart Mahomes is. He gets credited for off-schedule plays and spectacular plays, and his leadership is terrific, durable, by the way, too. But his intelligence, the way that he plays, the way he breaks down defense is a little bit better than you think. Josh Allen, number 2. Now, I'll admit it, I was wrong about Josh Allen. I was severely critical of Josh Allen when he was drafted out of Wyoming, because it's very rare, Mike, for an inaccurate quarterback in college to become accurate in the National Football League. If you go back to the 60s, quarterbacks, Division I quarterbacks, Mike, that throw for less than 60% completion rate, the success rate is very low. Josh Allen bucked the trend. I'm a fan. I'll admit it. I got on the bandwagon. I got that one wrong. So did a lot of NFL people. I give Brandon Beane credit, who I remember talking to Brandon Beane at their first, Josh Allen's first training camp. He told me if he gets his mechanics straightened out, his footwork straightened out, he's going to be a great quarterback, and that's exactly what happened. Number 3, Joe Burrow. I know some people would have Lamar Jackson over him. Joe Burrow's a phenomenal passer. Now, before he had the spate of injuries, including the ACL, he's a pretty good athlete for the position. Good size, really good arm strength, super aggressive. I worry about the durability. That's why he's not over Josh Allen, but he's at number 3. Number 4, Mike. Lamar Jackson, one of my favorite quarterbacks. I love watching this guy play. I know he hasn't been good in the playoffs. I know there's a durability issue. Throws a great ball. Nobody runs better than he does at that position. He's a better passer than you think, but they don't let him throw the ball a lot. I don't have a problem if you want to put other quarterbacks above him, but he's my number 4. Matthew Stafford, I know some people won't like this one. Put the team on his back when they won the Super Bowl, 40 touchdown passes when they won it that season. Still really, really good. They found a way to protect him. They've actually improved the interior of their offensive line. This guy's a really good quarterback. He won't be a Hall of Famer, Mike. He'll be on that list of right below the Hall of Fame, like a Rich Gannon type of quarterback, real winner, turned his career around after a lot of losing. He's now turned his career around, won a lot with the Rams. He's at number 5. Number 6, Mike, Justin Herbert. I know this is controversial. Some people think he should be at 10. Really gifted quarterback. Doesn't run like he did at Oregon. They have not done a good job of building around him. Their offensive line still isn't good enough, but he's a super gifted quarterback. It's a shame that last season they had so many problems with injuries around him. That's my top 6.
All right, so in that 6, it was Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Jackson, Stafford, Herbert. I don't know, that there's any complaints there. Stafford, you kind of mentioned when he was in Detroit, he wasn't known as a winning quarterback, just a guy who had a lot of talent. He wins that Super Bowls. That puts him on a different level. Herbert's interesting, hasn't done a lot of winning. I think a lot of this is based on his talent, the numbers he puts up, but he's going to have to start winning at some point, don't you think?
He does. Now, as we said, it's funny, we talk about Herbert, so we broke down on our Inside the Birds first show this week, which dropped Monday. You can hear it on any platform. We talked about what happened last season with Kellen Moore. They lost almost all of their key players on offense. Their skill position players that were lost for the season or missed significant time. But I remember the game against Minnesota. That was a game that Mike Williams tore his ACL. Herbert was unbelievable in that game. it was one of these games where you're like, wow, can he play like this every week? It was just pretty special. But they've not done a good job of building around him. So that's why it's kind of underachieved. But again, if you want to have Prescott ahead of him, I don't agree with putting Aaron Rodgers in my top 6 because he's now 40, turns 41 in December, Mike. Got hurt within the first series of the game last season. Coming off a torn Achilles. Do we really think he could get to that elite level again? I don't know about that.
Are you more inclined to say that he will approach the old Aaron Rodgers or take a step back to a guy that's just average?
No way he's going to be average if he's healthy. I don't know that he gets the elite level. Brady did it. Brady's the only one that I could think of did it in his 40s. It's maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's someone else I'm missing. Probably is that's done it. But I can't imagine he'll be an elite quarterback again. But you know what? With that defense, and if they could get everybody healthy on offense, I'm probably going to want to picking them to win that division. I think they could beat the Bills out. I really do.
All right, that was the top 6. Let's go to the next 6, down to number 12.
Dak Prescott at number 7. I know he's been hurt a little bit over his career. Still a really good passer. Played great in the regular season. Don't blame him for the playoffs. The defense was awful against the Packers. Still a really good quarterback. He's at number 7. I've got Rodgers at 8, as I just mentioned. This one was really tough. It was between Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts. My criteria was you have to start at least one full season. If you haven't, you don't get on there. He did start more than one full season, as we know. 2 years ago, he came in, started the last quarter or so of games, and obviously through the playoffs. And last year, he was great. Now again, this is not who's the most talented list. He's an executor. That's a Greg Cosell term. I love that term. He couldn't fit in every system. He fits great in West Coast system. He's a better athlete than you think. He's got quick feet. Shows some scrambling ability in the playoffs. I really like him, Mike. I'm a bigger fan, and a lot of teams got him wrong. Mr. Irrelevant, Mike. Let's not forget the last pick of the NFL draft 3 years ago.
I like him a lot. Purdy, I'm a big fan of. I like that word, too, executor there. All right, that's Brock Purdy at number 9. And you got Jalen Hurts listed here at number 10.
Yeah, and we could have on Friday's segment, we could just talk about Hurts and we could break him down more. But Mike, he didn't process very well last season. Boy, did he process and execute. He was so decisive that in 2022, and I remember talking about this on our spring shows, our off-season shows in 22, where I was like, wow, this could be his breakout season. I know he wasn't good enough the previous season. Maybe it's a good thing they didn't make the trade for Deshaun Watson. Boy, he looks like he could be a breakout player. I remember talking to someone with the Browns, and I was at their joint practices in Berea, Ohio for 2 days, and they were like, wow, Hurts looks like a different quarterback. Well, he was special that season. Unfortunately, he took a big step back last season, very inconsistent. Even when his numbers were good last season, he missed a lot of throws. Mike, it's to the point with Jalen Hurts. We need to know who he is as a quarterback. I'm not absolving the coaching staff. They didn't do a good enough job, and we know there's been some changes there, namely at offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. But Hurts has just got to play better. And I know he was hurt. We outlined this during the season with that knee injury. He didn't look quite right, but some of the things he was doing had nothing to do with his knee. You cannot move when you're not supposed to move. Stay in there and hang in there like he did in 22. So he's got to be better. Let's go to number 11. Trevor Lawrence, kind of like Hurts. I thought after 22, 23 would even be better. It was not. He struggled. Turnovers again. That's another problem for him. And now he did have 2 injuries, lower body ankle, high ankle sprain, which he came back too early, and a shoulder injury. Their offensive line didn't play well. He didn't play well. That's on him. He's at number 11. Tua Tagovailoa, the thing with him is he's an executor. He's a one progression quarterback. If he sees it, he throws it. He's phenomenal, Mike. When you make him hold on the ball, he gets hit and gets hurt. I worry about durability with him. I'd rather have Hurts than Tua. I'm not biased. I'm not a fan of any team. I'm just telling you what I think. Good quarterback, though, when he's protected. Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback, very durable until this Achilles injury. Man, and by the way, they're locked into his contract. The Falcons are for the first 2 seasons by structure. They can't get out of it. Jared Goff, number 14. I mean, most people thought he was done. How good he's been terrific with the Lions. Not mobile, though. That's the problem. You got to be mobile, but a good quarterback. If you want to have him over Cousins, I have no problem with it. And Kyler Murray, Mike, obviously he did great against the Eagles. Well, I think you could have done well against the Eagles, Mike. with you. You know, you're a lefty, are you not?
I'm right-handed.
Are you a righty? Because I saw your pictures of you pitching, so I can't remember if you're lefty or righty. But Kyler Murray's just taken a step back, so he's got to get back to where he was. And then the incompletes are. I'm a C.J. Stroud stan. I mean, I'm just blown away. One of the best rookie seasons in NFL history. He's phenomenal. He only started 1 year. He needs more. We can't put him in it. Jordan Love is another guy I love. Second half, no quarterback played better in the National Football League than Jordan Love in the second half. Anthony Richardson played great before he got hurt, but major shoulder injury, barely played, so they could not get in our top 15.
All right. By the way, Stroud, he made it in the executives' top 10, and Goff was number 9 on their list as well.
9.
Yes.
Wow. See, again, I'm not including guys. See, my criteria is different. I needed more of a sample, because just look at Hurts. And look at Lawrence. Look at
fair.
Look at Hurts in particular.
Fair.
I mean, Hurts has got to play better. He's got to be more consistent. I got on the wagon because I knew from the inside the building kind of how I know how hard he works. I know talking to one of the former coaches, blown away that he would get there at like 4:30 in the morning before the coaches did. That means a lot to me from a leadership standpoint because
they had Stroud number 7, by the way. Goff was number 9.
Okay, see. That Goff, that's high. Now he's been durable, but Hurts is interesting. We'll see if he can bounce back. And I think my list is pretty fair.
Yeah,
I know some people don't like Stafford at all. I don't.
They had Stafford number 5. They had Stafford 5. It was Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Lamar Jackson, Stafford, Herbert, Stroud, Rodgers, Goff, Prescott.
All right, Mike. Before we get out of here, I would put Stroud if we were including these guys who have not started a lot or only started 1 year or less. I would have Stroud. Now, this is really forward thinking. I would have Stroud at number 5 over Stafford. I would have it Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Jackson, Stroud. It's kind of ridiculous to do that. You remember that the stories that came out about the intelligence test on him was not good.
Yep.
Good for Nick Casseri, the GM, to throw that crap out, and that it turned out to be nonsense. And I'm so glad that he ignored it. And Jordan Love, I could tell you, did not have a good training camp last summer. Again, if we were including these guys that have only started 1 year, he'd be number 6 for me. You kind of know it when you see it. Yeah, we could be fooled. We didn't expect Wentz to take the step back that he did. That's another story. We'll talk more about this on Friday, Mike. We go deeper into Wentz and Hurts and some of these other quarterbacks. But I wanted to give you my list.
There is Adam Kaplan, everybody, and we'll talk more about that on Friday's show here on Football at 4 on the Sports Bash. And don't forget the Inside the Birds podcast. We're getting ready for training camp about this time next week. In fact, this time next week, the rookies will be reporting to the NovaCare Center. Adam, looking forward to it, man.
Thank you.
Football at 4, everybody, here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. All right, we'll keep it here for a minute. I do want to break down his list real quick. I think, Mahomes, Allen, Burrow. I like Burrow better than I like Allen, but it's small. Jackson, he has Stafford 5, Herbert, Prescott 7. Woo, that's, I don't have a big problem with Prescott 7, Rodgers 8, Purdy 9. He has Hurts 10. Now, reason why he doesn't have Stroud and Jordan Love included here. I like Brock Purdy, so I don't have a problem with him being in there. If Stroud was in there for me, I'd probably put him, right around that 5, 6, 7 spot, probably in the 7 spot where Prescott is, and bounce that down. Love maybe in the 8 spot, move that down a little bit. But yeah, I like his list. I think it's well thought out. But I like the criteria: size, athleticism, arm strength, accuracy, ability to execute, coachability, FBI, functional football intelligence, ability to process information. Pretty key. Durability, football character, and leadership. So how many of those do we give plus grades to Jalen Hurts? Size, athleticism. The athleticism, obviously, he's a mobile guy. He can move. His size, pretty solid size. He's not overly small. He's not overly big. He's kind of just an average-sized quarterback. His arm strength, I think, would be, average. Accuracy, kind of hard to tell sometimes with Hurts, whether he is deemed an accurate quarterback or not. His ability to execute, I think his point was the first year, 2 years ago, was very good. Last year, not as good. Coachability, I would think, is high. FBI, I would think football intelligence is high. Durability, I think you got to say is pretty good for Jalen Hurts. I mean, he plays hurt. Football character and leadership, I think character would be high. And leadership, when he came out, all we ever heard about was his leadership. And now here in year number 3, after his 3rd season, are we starting to wonder whether or not his leadership ability is wearing thin a little bit around the team. So that's a good conversation with Adam Kaplan that you guys will follow up on Friday.
Yeah, my only problem with these rankings is, and first of all, I'm glad that Adam gave a tangible criteria and not we just surveyed a bunch of people and here's the list like ESPN Plus did, which was part of my consternation yesterday. But what I thought was interesting what Adam said is he had Prescott higher than the ESPN Plus list was. And my question for you, Mike, is do you think if Dak Prescott wasn't on the Dallas Cowboys, if he was maybe in another organization, that he would have more team success? Because he has the individual success. He has the stats. But maybe if he was the Rams quarterback, or let's say he was the 49ers quarterback, would he be a comparable or better player than those teams' quarterbacks?
It's a good question. I don't know what to think about that. I don't think that it's one of those things. He hasn't won. So then you say, can he win? There's a lot of guys. Like, we didn't think Matthew Stafford could win.
Right.
No, he had to leave teams. I just don't think that Detroit was ever good enough. I do think Dallas is good enough. So then by proxy, is Dak good enough? Yeah, I think Dallas could win the Super Bowl with Dak Prescott playing quarterback.
But like, for example, last year when they got, beat by the Packers, it wasn't Dak's fault the defense allowed, 40 points or whatever it was.
Yeah, like I don't look at them and say they lose because Dak Prescott isn't good enough.
Right.
Like that's not the reason that they haven't won a Super Bowl. They have a multitude of reasons why they haven't won the Super Bowl, but it's not because Dak Prescott isn't good enough to. They just haven't got it done yet.
That's why I'm trying to decipher, like when I'm listening to what Adams, his criteria is, and he likes Stafford, but he also likes Prescott. And I just have to wonder if Prescott was in a different situation, would we be talking about him differently?
Probably. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if he was on Dallas all those years and then got traded to the Rams instead of Stafford, would the Rams have won that Super Bowl?
Probably. I mean, some people would probably say no.
Stafford was really good on that Super Bowl run.
He was really good in the run, yeah. But you could also argue that the Rams defense was a huge catalyst in that team's championship. And what has Dallas done in the regular season recently? They've had some good defenses. So is that is it a better coaching situation, for example? Coachability was one of the criteria, right?
Yep.
So if Dak is considered a very coachable player, could he just slide into a McVay or Shanahan organization and be plug and play?
Because again, I go back to I think Dallas could win the Super Bowl with Dak Prescott as their quarterback. I don't think they're not winning because he's not good enough to win.
Gotcha.
I just think the team hasn't been good enough. They're there where they are as a 12, 13, 11 win team in part because he is the player that he is.
So really, is there any quarterback that can overcome Dallas's issues?
Yeah, Mahomes.
One guy.
Probably.
That's a pretty bad indictment of the Cowboys.
They have a lot of other problems. I think their leadership is a problem. Mm-hmm. I think the coaching there has been a huge problem for them.
Huge flaw.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Mike McCarthy has been great at times. I think he has held them back at times. Before that, it was
Jason
Garrett that really held them back, that made just terrible decisions. I think if they had better coaching in some of those years, they probably would be a little bit more attention to detail and better. I think some of the times they lost some key games was because they didn't pay attention to details. They made some bad decisions, bad time management, that kind of stuff. And those kind of things in football matter. The coaching is one sport where I think you can look at the coaching and say they have a direct hand in every single play call and everything. Play calling, clock management, all that stuff. And if you can't pay attention to detail, and that's been the Dallas problem, to me, it's been more lack of attention to detail than lack of talent.
And that's why, for me, these conversations are so interesting, because it really is subjective how you differentiate between the individual and the team's success.
Adam Schefter, not Adam Kaplan-Harr, but Adam Schefter, ESPN's senior NFL insider, commented on how much pressure Jalen Hurts is under this season.
Jalen Hurts had a down year last year. I think he'd admit that. The entire organization and offense did. So, look, when you have professional pride, you take it upon yourself to bounce back the next year. There is always going to be an inordinate amount of pressure on the coach and the quarterback. And in the case of Jalen Hurts, who struggled at the end of last year, it's amplified some. But, again, it doesn't change the fact that he's got to produce or he's going to hear criticism and all the issues that came up the second half of last year.
It'll be interesting to see. He said, I think the whole conversation is interesting, like him saying that Jalen knows he didn't play well. He was pretty good last year. He was the favorite to win the MVP.
Halfway through the year, yeah.
For most of the season last year. And here we are saying, he just wasn't very good. I mean, so I do want to put that into some context there, is that, yes, it wasn't the season that he had the year before.
But it goes really quick. It goes back to you said about coaching, Mike. We have heard this offseason that they changed the coaches. They replaced the coaches. Yet the coach wasn't as good last year. So how much of the team's lack of success last year was Jalen, and how much of it was the coaching around it?
I'm going to bet, in my opinion, that the coaching had more to do with it than the talent on this team.
And if that's the case, then Jalen should be primed for a good year this year.
You would think. Yeah. I would be more inclined to say the Eagles are more ready for a bounce back season than they're going to go in the opposite direction, and that he is going to be the question mark at the end of the season again. That's all. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Thanks to Adam Kaplan, as always, here on the Football at 4. Don't forget the All-Star game tonight. You can hear the game on 97.3 ESPN. The coverage starts at 7 o'clock right here, and there is multiple Phillies starters. You're going to get Turner, you're going to get Bohm, you're going to get Harper. They're all in the lineup tonight. Turner's hitting 3, Harper's hitting 4, and Bohm is hitting 7. You can hear the game exclusively on 97.3 ESPN. When we come back, it's another edition of Nick's Nuggets. Nick Earnshaw is here. We'll get his Nuggets next on The Bash.
You're listening.
Drive into summer with the Honda CR-V and Accord, your fun-to-drive weekend getaway vehicles. From Honda, the 2024 Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com Best Value brand. So hurry in to the Honda Summer Event. For a limited time, well-qualified buyers can get a 2.9% APR on a 2025 CR-V or 2024 Accord.
See dealer for financing details based on 2024 Consumer Choice Awards from Kelley Blue Book. Visit KBB.com for more information.
With Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. It's time for another edition of Nick's Nuggets with Nick Earnshaw. Nick Earnshaw is in the house of the Nuggets. And, of course, here we got the All-Star game tonight. We had the Derby last night. We have a lot there. And holy mackerel, I had Sixers Summer League last night, too. Did you get into the Sixers Summer League last night?
Nah, I was all locked into the Home Run Derby last night. All locked in. I mean, it lasted a long time, Mike. I mean, it just kept going.
Nugget number 1, shorten the Derby.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it was going like really late. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like Bohm waited from the first time he hit. He was the first batter of the entire Home Run Derby. Hit 21 home runs, first round tied for the most, right? He didn't hit again for like another hour and 45 minutes, I think. Was it? I think that was the time.
45.
Crazy.
Hour 45. He stood around doing nothing.
That's insane to me. And that was my first nugget because it was such a long home run derby last night. Like I'm waiting around like, all right. I get like they want to do the timing thing and then they have the extra out thing afterwards. It's just too much. They're trying to get the best of both worlds there. And it just was way too long. And, Bohm, I mean, he was great last night. And, he looked very confident at the plate. He had the most home runs in the first round of the whole thing. He was tied, with Ramirez Ramirez, but he goes into that second round. He's sitting around for so long. He did a great job. I mean, he got 14 home runs. They lost in the swing off to the eventual winner, Teoscar Hernandez. But sitting around that long, maybe Alec Bohm wins that if he's not sitting for almost 2 hours. I mean, it's crazy.
It was ridiculous. I mean, honestly, it was ridiculous. And it's not like, the home run derby, it's one of those things where after a while, it starts to get a little monotonous, right? I mean, you start to see the same thing over and over. And, listen, Bohm, and we talked about this yesterday, if Bohm starts to get the swing where he gets into a rhythm, he can start popping a few. His second time, he had 3. He called timeout, and then he got cranking. He hit 11 after the timeout there. So it just shows you what kind of power Alec Bohm does have. I mean, he definitely is a guy that when he wants to, he has the ability to crank out a bunch of home runs, and we saw that last night.
Yeah, when he got into his groove last night, I mean, he was firing away. I was getting so excited. I mean, there was a picture the Phillies put out today. It was like of Trey Turner, Strahm, Hoffman, Harper, all those guys getting up, so excited watching Bohm hit all these home runs. Because in that second round, he was after that timeout, like you said, he just kept going and going, and he got into this huge groove where it was home run after home run after home run. And that was pretty exciting. Like, I thought he put on an absolute masterclass, a great display. Stinks he lost in the swing off to Teoscar Hernandez, but I mean, sitting around that long, I don't blame him. There was some disappointments last night. Gunnar Henderson, disappointing. Pete Alonso, how about him? He was terrible last night. He couldn't get it going whatsoever. Philly moves on. He had the most home runs the first round. Pete Alonso, I mean, after he was done, he was essentially eliminated, and that got Bohm into the next round. So that was pretty cool to see, Pete Alonso go down. I mean, you're never not loving a Met going down. I mean, that's the best part. You love seeing a Met go down. And he was whining about the All-Star game. If he wasn't in the All-Star game, then he probably wasn't going to do the Derby. There was that discussion over the last week. So I'm glad to see Pete Alonso. He's won it a couple of times already. Enough. Bohm did great last night. Teoscar Hernandez was fantastic too.
Well, I think the moral of the story was Alec Bohm, can hit for power. I mean, A lot of people question whether he can be that guy. I think it's just his approach. His approach is not to be a guy that's going to be a high strikeout guy. He can pop a home run, but don't expect a guy to hit 30, 35 home runs. He is what he is. He's going to be a guy to hit about 22 to 25 home runs. He's going to be the big RBI, big double guy, high contact, low strike. That's who he is. But we did see, for all these people who say, he doesn't have the power, he can't be that guy. I think we saw that he can be that guy. He just his approach is a little different, and to me, it's refreshing. I like the way he goes up there. But you saw, man, he hit some bombs last night, and when he got going, he really got going.
Yeah, it was a fun watch. I'm glad to see a Philadelphia Philly in the Derby, but man, we do have to bring it back. I mean, go back to the 10 outs thing. Last night was way too long. I just don't understand why you got to go the best of both worlds, right? You're trying to do the 3-minute thing, the 40 pitch. You're rushing. You can't even see the ball go out because you have the split screen. It doesn't make any sense. And then afterwards, when you get the bonus round of the 3 outs and you could get the 4th out, it's just too much. They're making it way too complicated at this point. I'm falling asleep late last night during the Derby. I'm like, is it over yet? My goodness. I just want to see if Bohm gets to the finals here. But it took forever. They have to change it back to the way it was. I don't know if we'll ever see that again, but they're trying too many different things, and they're just overcomplicating the Derby. That's the takeaway I had last night.
I wouldn't be surprised. Like, they keep tinkering the rules, it seems like, almost every single year.
Yeah.
They're doing something a little different. So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw them, hey, we're going back to the way it was. If you get enough groundswell of people that are like, go back to the way it was, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw it go back to that. But, yeah, the one takeaway from last night was it was too long.
Yeah, it was way too long.
Now,
we got to shorten
last night. That's the window. So ESPN probably says, look, we have a 3-hour window that we want to fill here, right? And, they're probably saying we wanted to fill that time. We need to fill all that time. So keep that in mind.
I think, but I was looking, how on your TV you could see what's up next at a certain time. I think it ran into SportsCenter. Like, I think SportsCenter was supposed to come on at 10 o'clock. I don't know if they expected it to go past 10. I mean, maybe a little bit, but it just kept dragging on and on. It was just taking forever. And even though they do have the time limit, they added the out thing afterwards. I think that's really what slowed everything up.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that, I mean, come on. Well, then you had the swing off with Bohm.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Was one, so that you're not accounting for. So, I don't know. Yeah, look, the takeaway was it was way too long. It was way too long. And, after Bohm got eliminated, I checked out. And quite frankly, after Bohm hit the first time, I was checking. I went to the Sixers Summer League game. It was way too long.
Yeah, way too long. That's the nugget number one. We got to get back to the old rules for the home run derby. All right. But speaking of the derby last night, Mike, nugget number two, I want to stay on it just for a little bit. Did you see the national anthem? Ingrid Andress was the singer for the...
I see it. You couldn't miss it. It's everywhere. I mean, it was literally all that was on my timeline last night.
I had to bring this up due to the fact that I don't know if is it worse than Fergie in 2018 NBA All-Star game? I don't know if you remember that one. That's the one it's being compared to. Fergie, I thought, had the top worst one of all time. She was number one. She was dragging out her words. I don't know what happened in 2018 NBA All-Star game. I don't know. Last night might have been worse. It might have been the worst one of all time.
There's two bad ones.
Roseanne was bad too.
She was doing it purposely bad. Carl Lewis was the other one.
Yep.
He famously sung and his voice kind of cracked and he's like, I'll make up for it. I promise. I don't know what was going on last night. Listen, I don't want to sit here and rip anybody who sings that song. It's a tough song to sing.
It is.
Generally, people who do get asked to sing it, it's because they nail it. They're very good at it. It was a rough listen last night. No question about it. And he's having a rough day today.
Yeah, definitely having a rough day. Social media is going nuts. I think, I don't know. I got to go back and listen to both of them back to back, I think. The Fergie and the one last night. Because Fergie was, do you remember the 2018 one? And you had all the players laughing. Last night, they showed Alec Bohm. He was trying to hold it together while he was standing there, here listening to the anthem. He cracked a little bit of a smile. It was reminiscent of that 2018 All-Star game where they're panning to all the NBA All-Stars and all of a sudden they're all just cracking up at what's going on. It's like they were professional singers. I don't know what happened. It was just a bad night, I guess. A bad night at the office. Bad day at the office, I guess.
Yep. I know that it got a lot of attention last night, which it should. Listen, you're a Grammy-nominated singer, and if it goes out like that, people are going to talk. No question about it. But that is a hard song to perform.
It is a hard song to perform. I've seen Jason Kelce perform it at a Sixers game a few years back. He did a pretty good job.
Mailata to sing last.
That's what I'm saying. Ask Mailata, maybe Kelce. Kelce might have been better than that. I'm not even lying. Like Kelce might have been better than last night, a couple of years back when he sung it at the Sixers game I went to. It was brutal last night. All right, moving along. Nugget number 3. Mike, we had a little bit of a signing with the New York Knicks. Former Sixer Cam Payne.
Yeah.
He's going to the New York Knicks, $3.1 million deal, according to Shams Charania of The Athletic. Now, I kind of wanted the Sixers to bring him back. He shot 38% from three with the Sixers in the regular season, 44% in 5 playoff games. He gave them energy in the playoffs. He now goes to the rival New York Knicks. He's had some off the court issues as well this offseason. I don't know if that might have played a factor, him maybe not returning. Remember, the Sixers just re-signed Kyle Lowry as well. But yeah, no campaign. I would have liked to see them bring him back. He can shoot the three, has a playoff pedigree, gave him a little bit of energy as well, maybe a little bit of depth. He wasn't cheap. I don't know. This was a skeptical move to me to go to the New York Knicks. I would have liked to see the Sixers maybe bring him back.
Yeah, he was a guy that I think could have helped this team. In fact, okay, let me ask you, would you have rather had him back or Kyle Lowry?
Ooh, I'd probably slight edge to Kyle Lowry. Slight edge to Kyle Lowry.
All right, well, I think, you brought Eric Gordon in. Now you had Lowry, Jared McCain. Somebody had to go, it seems like, for playing time purposes. And it seems like Cam Payne was a guy, but I think Eric Gordon is has a bigger role, but he's the guy that's not afraid to take the big shot. He's the guy that, can get hot, shooting a bunch of threes, probably a more consistent player. So would you rather Gordon or Cam Payne back?
I'd probably take Gordon. I mean, Gordon, he can shoot the three still. He's cheap as well. I would have liked to see Cam Payne back. I think Eric Gordon is a little bit of an upgrade though. He's a little bit older, obviously, than Cam Payne being younger. But Eric Gordon being older, that's a little bit of concern for me, but I still think he might be the better player. He's got plenty of playoff experience as well.
Yeah, I listen, I like Payne, but there's only so many roster spots. There's only so much playing time.
Yeah, exactly. So with Payne, it was like, all right, he's gone. He moves to the New York Knicks. Now, is it going to hurt if he makes like a big shot in the playoffs, like against the Sixers?
Yes.
It's Cam Payne. I mean, it's going to be hurtful if it's Cam Payne doing it.
I thought about that last night. Is Cam Payne having one of those nights where he does kind of get going and he hits a bunch of threes? Hey, that's what you take a shot with that. But, it's one of those things where you can't have them all back.
No, you can't have them all back. But there is still another name out there, Gary Trent Jr. Like, Sixers could get him. I mean, if they can get him on a cheap deal, I mean, that would be a huge signing if the Sixers are able to bring him back, bring him in. And that would just give them a lot of depth and a lot of options as well. Do you buy in to the Nick Nurse stuff? That they've had trouble in the past, and like that might be a factor of why he may not sign here, because that's been kind of reported out there. It's been floated. I think we're reading too much into that.
Don't know their history. All I do know is he had some of his best seasons playing there. I mean, he had 18 points a game playing under Nick Nurse, so I would imagine that has to be taken under consideration, for him is, hey, I had some really good years playing for Nurse. I don't know what I had not heard that they had some issues there, but, he definitely had some of his best years playing for Nurse in Toronto. So, if they could add Gary Trent Jr., I'd be all for that. He's the kind of guy that I think is a big shot maker, shoots the ball from three. And, he's a guy who, is a good defensive player. He's one of these guys that's a wing defender for you, that is a tough guy kind of on the perimeter. He's one of those guys that the Sixers have kind of lacked over the years.
Yeah, he is. It would be a nice signing. I know Rico Hines and him, I think, had a pretty strong relationship in the past too. So maybe that could be another reason he comes back, even if it's not as strong with Nick Nurse. Rico Hines, another name that he's had a strong relationship with in the past. I hope if they get Gary Trent, I will be thrilled, off the wall excited. You'll be seeing me going crazy here on Knicks Nuggets, Mike.
Off the wall, huh? You'd be bouncing off the wall for Gary.
Yeah, for Gary Trent. I would love that sign. See, you remember how I wanted to approach the offseason. I wanted Daryl Morey to approach the offseason. A lot of depth, pieces surrounding Embiid and Maxey. They continue to have pieces. You get Gary Trent on a cheap deal like they did with Kelly Oubre last year. That gets me excited. I'm probably the only one who gets that excited about it. But I mean, you get a guy like that who can shoot the three, defend. I would love to see him come here and be a part of this team. That's why I love the Caleb Martin signing so much. They're adding these pieces that can build a championship roster. You need to have depth, and those guys with pedigree on this team, I'd be thrilled. Be thrilled.
Yeah, I like the move too if they can get him. And look, we talked about Caleb Martin a couple weeks ago, and I said, man, if you could find a way to get him, I'd be thrilled. And they ended up finding a way to get him. Now, Gary Trent, is he willing to take a much lesser deal, a 1 year, much like he would be similar, I guess, to a deal that Kelly Oubre ended up taking last year.
Yep, exactly. It'd be kind of on the order of the Oubre deal, and maybe you get the same kind of play from him heading into this year. That would be fantastic. All right,
Gary Trent, by the way, Gary Trent would add a possible starting level player.
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
He's a guy who's just like, hey, he's a veteran player who does it. No, he would be a player that would be in the starting, conversation.
And he's young too, which is so great as well. All right, final nugget. It is the All-Star game. The All-Star game is tonight. Mike, is Major League Baseball's All-Star game the best All-Star game left out of all of them? I mean, we've seen the Pro Bowl go to flag football. We've seen 3-on-3 in hockey, basketball. I don't even know what they're doing anymore. Nobody tries. It's like a glorified YMCA game in the NBA All-Star game. Even without the idea of having the All-Star game decide the home field advantage of the World Series, is it still the spectacle and the best game left?
Not close. It's the only game that's the actual real game. The only thing that's not real about the game is pulling the pitcher, every single inning, but you're getting another high quality pitcher every single inning. But other than that, the game's great. By the way, if you remember back in 2008, Brad Lidge saved the All-Star game. It gave the Phillies home field advantage. That All-Star game was one of the most memorable ones that I remember watching. It's the only thing I can remember about an All-Star game is that Lidge closed the game to give the Phillies home field advantage. The other thing is, as I talked about a little bit earlier today, Bryce Harper has a suggestion that sounds pretty familiar. He says, bring back the players wearing the uniforms of their teams.
You texted me bright and early. Mike.
Smart guy. Bryce Harper's a smart guy. Wear the team uniforms.
Yeah, I'm with you. I want them to bring that back so bad. It looks so great. Like, they keep the All-Star hats. I'm cool with them keeping the All-Star hats, like with the star, the team logo on there. That's really cool, I think. But it looks so much better when you have all the guys in different uniforms from the National League, from the American League. The vibes look more off the charts. When they're all wearing the same thing, American versus National, it's just not the same. The vibes aren't the same, Mike. I'm with you on that. I woke up to that text. I'm like, oh, I'm with you there. I totally agree. Bryce Harper with another great idea. Now, not a great idea to bring Whit Merrifield in, but this one, good idea here.
See, now I thought last week you were for the teams wearing the uniform.
No.
Yeah, I thought we had a discussion last week, and I was saying that the bad part is you're more for having each team be represented.
Yes. I want each team to have a representative there, but the uniform thing, I'm totally with.
But I said, having a team represented, it defeats the purpose if you don't see them in their uniform, because now they're unrecognizable and nobody knows who they represent. So you have a player representing the team and he's not in the uniform of the team he's representing. So essentially he's unrecognizable.
That's fair. I remember, we had that long discussion last week. I still think they should have a representative because each team, a fan base, you want to see your best player there.
Nobody cares.
I care, Mike. I want it to be there.
I'm telling you, kids today don't care.
I know.
You're like, it makes sense if you're like, hey, nobody cares what player on the Colorado Rockies is there. There's not one kid in Denver that's like, I couldn't tell you who's the Rocky player.
The Rocky player this year is, I'm trying to think.
You don't know either. So you proved my point. Nobody cares who the Rocky player is. Nobody cares who the Oakland player is. I mean, Mason Miller, great. Not one little kid in Oakland is sitting there watching that game.
They're not excited about Mason Miller?
Hoping to see Mason
Miller.
You
think it's just a generational thing?
Probably, yeah. Kids just don't watch games anymore. Like, they watch highlights on TikTok. Yeah. They watch highlights on whatever platform. They're not watching 9 innings of baseball, and they surely don't know who Mason Miller is.
Well, I think that's another discussion. I don't think people are watching the games in full as much as they used to. That's a whole nother discussion. Yeah. People are just not watching the games in full anymore.
The only time you would see Mason Miller is if you watched the game in full and the A's happen to be winning that game, which doesn't happen often. So
they're not even at 40 wins. They're not even at 40 wins, but it'll be fun. I'll be tuned into the game tonight.
But don't you think it's much more conducive for the Pittsburgh Pirates to have Paul Skeens on the mound tonight wearing a jersey that says Pittsburgh across the front?
I'm totally for that.
All-star outfit that he's going to be dressed in.
Yes, 100% for that. I want them to be wearing their own uniforms. It makes the distinction. In case you don't know who everyone is, you know what team they play for. It makes no sense. They got to go back to that too. Go back to the old home run derby rules and go back to everyone wearing their own uniform. That's it, Mike. Nugget number 4. 4-pack for you today.
All right, there you go. Nick's Nuggets here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. He'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Nuggets. I won't be here tomorrow, but Nick and Josh will have you for the rest of the week with the Nuggets, and Nick will be filling in a couple of days while I'm gone as well. All right, Nick, I will see you next week.
All right, Mike. See you next week.
All right, there's Nick's Nuggets here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. Hey, we got a lot more to go, and don't forget, we're going to be live Happy Hour Friday, July the 26th. Yes, the Sports Bash will be live celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash. We'll be at Giuliano's Pub and Grill, 2264 Ocean Heights Avenue in Egg Harbor Township. Stop out and have a beer with me and the show and enter to win tickets to see the Smashing Pumpkins and Green Day at Citizens Bank Park. We'll have $3.50 Bud Light drafts, $4 neutral vodka seltzers all throughout the show. It's all for a special 15 years Happy Hour Friday. We're going to be at 7 different locations throughout the rest of the summer, and our first stop is next Friday at Giuliano's, and everybody in the listening audience, I hope you take a time to stop out, say hello, let us know how long you've been listening, when you started listening. We'd love to meet you. We'd love to see you. Giuliano's next Friday for Happy Hour Friday with the Sports.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Final hour of the show, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Got a good hour for you. You know, one of the things about sports is longevity of the franchise. Can you consistently be good? Well, to do so, you got to have good veteran players, but you got to have good young players behind them that have the ability to keep the franchise moving. It's one of the things the Eagles have done so well. They have constantly had young talent that have come in and replaced the older guys. As great players have moved on, the Eagles have replaced them with great players. Over at 97.3 ESPN.com, as we hit the All-Star break, my producer Josh wrote an article last year about the top 25, the top 10 players 25 or younger in Philadelphia. Well, we've hit that time of the year again where he has the new list, and I put together my own list too because I want to see how many are the same as yours. I have not seen your list. It is not a good list.
It was difficult because some of the guys who were obvious last year, Jalen Hurts and others, they're no longer 25 years old. Bryson Stott, he's also 26 years old. So the choices have thinned out, and now you're having to try to you're almost like over rationalizing. Do I put this guy on? Do I not put this guy on? Oh snap, that guy's 26 now. I forgot about him. So it becomes a very interesting exercise.
Sure does. Now I really tried to look at every roster, and I rationalized putting the 10 guys that I put on the roster. Okay. Mm-hmm. So some of these players, I'm very intrigued to see if my 10 match your 10. And I have not read your list yet, but we do want to invite the listeners to text in 609-403-0973. What I will start off by saying is I have to imagine that my first 4 are also your first 4.
Well, I'm pretty sure the top 2 are probably the same. We'll find out about the rest.
Well, just in lieu of people texting us these 4 names, I have to imagine they're the same, okay? Tyrese Maxey.
Number 1.
Devonta Smith.
Number 2.
Landon Dickerson.
So Dickerson is not on my list because he turns 26 in September.
All right, so he will be 26 at the start of the season. So you took him off the list. All right, so if I'm taking him off the list, that means I'm putting someone at the bottom of my list. And I know who it is because he was the guy I was debating between my 10th. So then I only have 3 guys that are definitively on the list. Then number 3 would be Jalen Carter.
So Jalen Carter, for me, is number 5.
I can't even imagine who else would be ahead of him.
So I have Kerkering at 3.
Wow, I'm very shocked by that.
I'm not a Kerkering guy, but I did a little extra digging on him. In his first 36 games, he has a 1.46 ERA and 44 strikeouts in a Phillies uniform. That's before Sunday's game where he was also had a perfect inning. So I'm starting to come to the dark side when it comes to Kerkering.
Kerkering made my list, but he is not that high.
I'm starting to see the light on Kerkering, and I think that he is easily the best young Phillies player at this point in time.
Well, because you just told me that Dickerson didn't qualify, it added a second Philly to my list. I only had one.
So you added a new one.
Well, Kerkering was the only one that made my list.
So now everyone just bump up a slot for you.
Yes, because I was debating between the other Philly at number 10 or the person that I put at number 10.
Gotcha.
All right. So, all right. I think it's easier to go from the top to the bottom because the top guys are so
easily identifiable.
Yes.
Now, you had Jalen Carter, you said 3?
I moved him up to 3 because I had Dickerson 3, and then I put Carter up to 1. So 1 is Maxey, 2 is Smith, 3 is Carter.
So why do you have Carter at 3?
I don't think there's anybody at 4 that's even close to him.
See, my problem with Carter is I'm still looking at, I felt like he had hit that rookie wall last year, and I want to see what his next step in the evolutionary process
I could say the same thing about Kerkering, though. Kerkering really has less resume than Carter does.
Kerkering's got 37 games. Carter has, what,
He
15?
played one Carter's played one full season. Kerkering has not done that.
Not yet, no.
So Carter has at least one full season under his belt. Therefore, to me, he has more of a resume than Kerkering. And listen, there's no bigger fan than Kerkering than me, and I can't even justify having him over any of the top 3. He is not. I could not do it. So I have Maxey 1. I have Kerkering 4.
Okay. So we're not that far off, though, from each other. It's not like,
No, but I think it's Maxey, Smith, and Carter, and then a huge drop-off. Kerkering. After that, I only have one guy after that. I mean, 1, 2, 3 guys that I have in mind have never played a game before.
I have a couple of those, yep.
And then the other guy has played basically half a season, one maybe full season if you put them together. And then the other guy has played. I mean, he's at least somebody who has experience under his belt.
Right.
So my number 5 is Michkov. I mean, to me, he's the most exciting prospect that this town has had.
This is Lindros.
Really? I mean, yeah. I mean, he's 19 years old, so he'll be on this list for a while, you hope anyway. I mean, because if he's not, then that's a problem. But to me, he is more exciting than any other player behind him.
So I have Michkov at 6 for me.
So what were your top 5?
So my top 5 are Maxey.
Yep.
Devonta Smith.
Yep.
Kerkering.
Yep.
Carter. Tippett.
All right, so I have Tippett 6.
So we kind of flip-flop.
Yep.
You got Michkov 5. So we got the same round.
Tippett, to me, has been good, but he's not excitingly good.
I get that, but I feel like I got to give him some credit for he's actually played. I haven't seen Michkov play yet, so I'm kind of like rating Michkov as you are based on what his potential is, where Tippett has become way better than I think I've ever expected him to be coming back in that Giroux trade. I mean, they gave him that new contract, and this is a guy who was second of any Flyer last year in points. He had 5 power play goals. He was a stud, and he became a very important player for the team.
Well, put it this way. You know, you made the trade. You got Tippett back in return for Claude Giroux. You got a player back in return that is actually usable, and that turned out to be a good player. So, yes, it's a trade that has worked out. And maybe I should have him higher than Michkov for that reason, because you traded a franchise player to get him, and you've got a player back in return. They gave him a big deal.
They did. They gave him a very big deal. They paid him. Big deal here. Exactly. So now we're down to number 7. So who is Mike Gill's number 7?
These here are all now. I mean, I got Quinyon Mitchell 7. I mean, he's your first round pick. You got to imagine that you're hopeful that he turns into something really good, a Pro Bowl player, hopefully an all-pro level player. Cooper DeJean at 8. And then my last 2 guys, I mean, I'm really stretching at this point.
So my number 7 is Jordan Davis.
I had Davis in the crosshairs, but you know what? To me, he's been disappointing.
I agree he's been disappointing, but he was a guy who was part of the top 10 rushing defense in the NFL. So he's mostly here to fill space and get tackles and stop the run. So I feel like at least when he's played, he has done that job, and I'm willing to give him the reasonable doubt moving forward.
Okay.
First round pick.
I'm more excited about the guys I listed than him, put it that way.
Okay. Number 8, I went back to the Flyers. Sam Ersson. I think Ersson did a great job being thrust in the duty. He's 24 years old. He's a guy who, he's right there, Mike. He is filling a void that was left behind without Carter Hart. And guess what? He had 4 shutouts last year. The last time a Philadelphia Flyers goaltender had 4 shutouts in a season was the 2015-16 season.
I hope so. I hope that I'm wrong about not having him on my list. I just don't view him as a starter. And I don't think the Flyers do either.
We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying I'm not right or wrong. We'll find out. I think the Flyers looked at him as a backup and lost Carter Hart and really don't want to address the position again. So they're going to try to go with him as the starter. I don't know that they view him as a starter.
For right now, I do. That's why it's on my list.
All right, so then we have the last two.
So you mentioned one of my guys already. I have Cooper DeJean as my number 9.
Okay, I have him 8. I have the two Eagle draft choices 7 and 8. Okay.
So I picked DeJean higher than Quinyon Mitchell because he's the more, for me, dynamic athlete. And I think that he could be like a Malcolm Jenkins-esque player where he's used in different positions of the defense and be a weapon for years to come. I'm projecting on.
And I have him higher than you do, so I mean, there's no real debate in that one because I'm hoping that he is more exciting, than the two guys that I have.
You had him at 8, you said, right?
I have him at number 8, yeah.
So who is your number 9?
My number 9 is Nolan Smith.
Interesting.
And this is a little bit based on the Slay conversation. Can he be a game? Look, he was a first-round pick, just like Mitchell, and DeJean was a second-round pick. Nolan Smith was a first-round pick. So I think we can be excited about him and give him another chance to show why the Eagles picked him in the first round. So I don't want to write him off, and I'm not going to write him off by putting him at number 9 on my list.
Just to remind people, here is what Darius Slay said on the Green Light podcast about Nolan Smith.
He looks a lot different this year. And one thing I can say about Nolan, ever since I met Nolan, he only know one speed. He one of the guys you got to watch out for your own self because he hit teammates and everybody. So even in practice, man, he's the guy that's going to run to the ball. He's not a 10-yard guy. He more like, I'm trying to see ball, get ball. He going to be a special year, man, for him this year, man. Especially after him running behind Hassan all year. I think it'll be very special.
That sold you.
That quote or that comment and bite, whatever you want to say, that entered my mind when I was putting my list together as to, you know what? Nolan Smith, I'm more intrigued by him than anybody else that was eligible at that age group.
I think that's fair. And I think that maybe I have to reconsider who my last guy on my list is if we're going off of just potential.
So your number 9 was?
My 9 was DeJean.
Okay, so you have one guy left.
Right. Now, you had to add somebody because you took Landon Dickerson off.
That's right.
So who is the guy that you had to add?
Johan Rojas is my number 10. He's the starting center fielder. He is a dynamic defensive player. He's got speed. He obviously needs to work at consistency at the plate. I don't know that he's ever going to be a 275 hitter or the hitter that anybody wants him to be, but his speed and defense are definitely more appealing than anybody else that I could find 25 years and younger in the city of Philadelphia right now.
So my number 10 is not Johan Rojas. My number 10 is Joel Farabee.
You know, I thought about a couple of the other Flyers, Farabee, Morgan Frost.
Farabee had a career-high 50 points last year. He also, for the second straight year, was one of the Flyers' best goal scorers.
I can't like argue that and say, well, come on, that's ridiculous. I feel all these guys are very flawed, not exciting. I mean, Rojas should be an exciting player. He's a goal. I mean, the play he made the other day in the outfield.
Yeah, he tracked the ball.
Was unbelievable. Then he hits a home run in the game, by the way. It's funny. At the time, so we were out on Saturday. I was watching the game somewhere with a buddy of mine who he and I battle about Rojas.
The anti-Rojas friend.
We battle about Rojas all the time. I like Rojas. He thinks he stinks. And I happened to be in the bathroom when Rojas hit the home run. I said, what happened? What happened? And nobody wanted to tell me what happened. It was like, I don't want to hear. You'll never hear the end of it from me from, the fact that Rojas hit the home run. But
so you keep asking, like, what happened? Somebody tell me.
Listen, I know Rojas's flaws. I'm not, blind to them. I don't think he's a good hitter. But what I think he is a player that you can win with on this team because I don't put a lot of pressure on my 9-hole hitter. I understand that not every hitter in the lineup is going to be a 275 hitter. I could get by with a 230 hitter if the top 8 guys do their job, then my 9-hole hitter can do his job, which is to save runs. And that's what the center fielder is there for, to save runs. So I value his defense and speed as a weapon to score more runs and to take runs off the board for the other team more than I value him hitting 30 or 40 points higher.
I can see that. I do think his defense is elite, and I think that he has, since he came back to the big leagues, he has been better than when he was earlier this season.
Well, he's added the bunt. You know, he has tried to lay down a bunt here and there and then use his speed. He has put the ball in play a little bit more. He did hit the home run the other day, which I don't even know if I want to see that. I don't know if I want to see him hit home run. Of course, every now and then if he pops a homer, you're okay with that. But, you know, I don't value Johan Rojas for his bat. I don't. That's not how I look at him. Now, the big conversation was last year in the playoffs when he came up and he was really struggling. The bases were loaded, and I get it. He's not the guy you want up in that spot. But the conversation was more, they didn't have anybody else to put in that spot. I mean, you go to the team right now, the option was Jake Cave or Christian Pache.
Horrible options.
Yeah, you just didn't have another option. So to me, I'm looking at that point and I'm saying, look, I almost hope he just hits a little nubber and beats it out.
Right.
Which I think he had a better opportunity of doing than the other two idiots getting a hit.
That's true.
You know, so I said, I get it. I don't think he's a good hitter. I would hit for him in this spot if I had somebody, like last year, for instance. Let's say the Phillies had Merrifield on their team last year. The version of Merrifield that he was last year.
With the Blue Jays.
But he wasn't starting that night.
Right.
I would have hit Merrifield for him in that spot.
I would too.
Absolutely. But you can't sell me that I should hit for Christian Pache for anybody at any time. I just have to question your sanity. If you ever tell me in any situation, you know who I should hit in this spot with the bases loaded of a playoff game? Pache. I will never accept that answer, ever. So, yes, Rojas is number 10 for me, and I don't really think there's an 11. I mean, you gave me Ariston.
I gave you Ariston and Farabee.
Just not excited enough about those two guys.
That's fine.
Michkov is the only guy, and Tippett, I think, because of how he was acquired. He was acquired for a franchise player. And normally, when you traded Giroux at the stage of his career, you're lucky to get anything of value back in return, and you got a player that ends up being an actual piece.
And better than you probably thought he was going to be. Because that's how the Flyers, the Flyers did not expect him to be this. Because he was a kind of a, I don't want to say he was a failed prospect, but he was a guy that Kevin Durst talked about, that the Panthers were like, he's not really working for us, so you take him.
The only other options, the Phillies have Pache.
Nope.
Now, you could have thrown Andrew Painter in there. That would have been an outside the boxer.
It would have. I tried to stick with production on my list at least because I felt like I was projecting enough when it came to guys like DeJean and with Michkov that I was trying to at least lean into, all right, these guys, at least I have tangible evidence for what they've done.
Yeah.
Painter is still like this cloud in the sky.
Painter being hurt clouds that. Rafael Marchand is 25. He is the only other player on the Phillies roster that would qualify other than Michael Mercado. He is also currently 25 years old.
I did not have Michael Mercado under consideration.
You could have put Jared McCain on this list, I guess.
Maybe if you feel
gonna
that strongly.
if you're going to include Michkov, Quinyon Mitchell, and Cooper DeJean, he certainly deserves recognition.
See, my problem with that is McCain is a first-round pick.
He's 20 years old, by the way.
Michkov is considered the best Russian prospect since Evgeny Malkin.
I'm just saying, but you put Mitchell and DeJean on there.
I got DeJean in part because I think DeJean's potential is higher than McCain.
I didn't put McCain on my list. I'm just saying the only other Sixer that other than Maxey,
which is wild because you don't really think of the Sixers as an old team, but
well, and for years they had so many young players.
Right.
Ricky Council's 22, KJ Martin's 23.
Look, if KJ Martin has a great year this year, he goes on the list.
So they would be the only other out, and Jared McCain is 20. The Eagles have a bunch of guys who, I don't think any of them are, in the realm of higher than the guys that we picked.
Right. And I think that, again, going back to Mitchell and DeJean, you're leaning into guys like that because of their potential.
Yeah, the only guys that you could say, Cam Jurgens is 24, so you could have thrown Cam Jurgens in there.
Could have. Wasn't comfortable doing it. I feel like I still need to see more of him.
I didn't go with Jordan Davis, and you did.
I did, yep. I still think that first-round pick pedigree has some value.
He's 24, by the way. Milton Williams is 25. Nakobe Dean is 23.
Injuries bother me with Dean.
I went with Nolan Smith. You did not.
I did not, but maybe I should. Maybe I could reconsider. Again, Nolan Smith is a projection too.
Eli Ricks, Kaylee Ringo are both 22. Reed Blankenship is 25. Sidney Brown is 24.
If Sidney Brown didn't get injured last year and he was able to finish the year strong, I might have considered him coming into this.
Yeah, so to me, I think for the most part, we got the right. Now, you have two guys I don't. I have Rojas and Nolan Smith, and you do not have those two.
Right. I don't have Smith. I don't have Rojas. Correct.
Gotcha.
I got Jordan Davis, and I got Farabee.
Gotcha. Yeah, the Farabee one, I can't argue with it. If you're going to tell me.
You're not saying it's a bad pick. It just wasn't your pick.
No, I would say that the Philadelphia scene of 25 and under is not great.
Right. Slim pickings.
Really. The Flyers options, you had, the legitimate one, like you could put.
And I had Ariston on my list too.
You got Farabee. Brink is a guy who's young. Man.
You mentioned Morgan Frost earlier.
Drysdale, who they got last year.
Drysdale is interesting. The problem with him is the health. And that's always kind of like this head scratcher.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing with Farabee and Tippett is they played almost every game the last couple of years. So it's like, okay, I can tangibly see what they are and what they're doing.
Yeah. So that's our list. Top 10 players in Philadelphia, 25 years or younger. What do you guys think of the list? Text us now, 609-403-0973. It's the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform. At Mike Gill Show, use the hashtag SB Live. Don't forget, Sports Bash is going to be live at Giuliano's Happy Hour Friday, July 26th from 2 to 6. $3.50 Bud Light, $4 neutral vodka seltzers all day during the show, and everybody who comes out. It's an open invitation to everybody. Come out, hang out, have a beer, see the show live. Come on up, say hello. Let us know how long you've been listening, when you first started. We're celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash all summer long. We're going to be at 7 different South Jersey locations, pubs, restaurants, all over the area. Our first stop is next Friday at Giuliano's Pub and Grill with Bud Light $3.50, $4 neutral vodka seltzers, and Happy Hour Friday all day long during the show. The Sports Bash, Happy Hour Friday, the first stop next Friday, July 26th, Giuliano's in EHT.
We have the perfect sitting in traffic.
You come with me.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Hopefully you enjoyed our top 10 list of the Philly athletes 25 or under. Is it a bleak list, or is it just because they have so many well-established stars? Like Alec Bohm's 27, Stott's 26, Jalen Hurts will be 26 when the season starts. Dickerson will be 20. There's a lot of guys in that 25 or 26 to 30 range.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of guys who are entering the prime of their careers right now, and I think there's just fewer guys. Like you said before, Mike, there would have been a time if we wrote this article, let's say 5-6 years ago, that list is dominated by Sixers, right? So it's just a kind of like a changing of the the tide. The teams that used to be the young up and comers are now the here and now.
Time for today's Big Three here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live.
And the Big Three being brought to you by Boxing Insider Promotions. The boxing event of the summer is Friday, July 26th. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. Mike, we have some official matchups. Undefeated junior middleweight Justin Figueroa from Atlantic City will be taking on Victor Mendoza Arola from Colorado on that night, and as well as Bruce Seldon Jr. will be taking on Isaiah Marheim from Ohio. Those are some of the great fights that'll be on deck of the action-packed Tropicana Atlantic City showroom, where all the fights will be Friday, July 26th. Tickets on sale at Ticketmaster.com.
Yeah, you're going to be there that night.
I will be there that night. We will be having a bit of a watch party, so people can have the day with you at Giuliano's and then roll over to Atlantic City and watch the fights.
Should be a good time.
It should be. Mike, first story I want to start with, the story that came out earlier, I guess we should have saw this coming, but it's now the real deal because Brandon Ayuk has begun the process.
Here we go.
Of leaving San Francisco. Mike Garafolo reported earlier today, and then Adam Schefter confirmed that when contract negotiations have failed to yield any lucrative extension, Brandon Ayuk has officially requested a trade ahead of reporting to training camp.
Got it.
Ayuk's request comes a week before veterans are supposed to report to Niners training camp, and the idea being that there's a huge divide between Ayuk and the 49ers on what he is worth. So first of all, Mike, Ayuk is set to make $14 million. It is the final year of his rookie contract, so whoever acquires it will at least have the first right to offer him a contract for his free agency next year. Your reaction?
Well, you knew this seemingly was coming to a head at some point here. Now, he requests a trade, and they have not been able to get to a deal. That's not a surprise. The question is, where is he viewed on the pantheon for them? You know, if you take a look at wide receivers, do they put him higher on the list than Deebo Samuel? Is he more important to them than Deebo Samuel? 105 targets, 75 catches, 1,300 yards, 7 touchdowns. You know, he has the receiving yards, 18 yards a catch. He's a big play guy. Can they afford to lose a player of that magnitude from their offense? I don't know about that, man. I know they have other options. They have McCaffrey. They got Deebo and how they use him. But part of why I think they can use Deebo and McCaffrey the way that they do so effectively is they have a big player like that on the outside. Brandon Ayuk be asking for a trade is putting the 49ers in a tough spot right now. They respectively kind of asked or the Ayuk side, I guess, respectfully asked to be moved.
Yeah.
He wasn't all pro last year, and he wants to be paid like all these wide receivers that he sees around them.
So I want to bring up, Mike, I want to give you credit because you're the first person I talked to about this, and you were the first person I saw anywhere who brought up his potential destination. When I asked you when this news came out a few hours ago, you said the first thing that came to mind was the Washington Commanders.
Mm-hmm. No, you asked me, which team do you think would be a team that that should call them because they could need this player to change their season? Well, it was something to that effect.
Yeah, I was saying, who's the first team that you think of that should be calling first in line to get Brandon Ayuk? Mm-hmm. And you said the Washington Commanders.
That was my answer. The Washington Commanders would be the team.
Well, the reason I bring up the Commanders is because it came out later, about an hour and a half ago. Jaden Daniels is already on social media recruiting Brandon Ayuk to his team. Former Arizona State teammates Ayuk and Jaden Daniels.
Oh, I didn't put that together.
And Daniels and Ayuk apparently are doing the whole emoji back and forth with each other on TikTok and Instagram now.
Very cute. I picked Washington to your question because I've said many times, I think Washington could be last year's Houston if Jaden Daniels is this year's version of C.J. Stroud. And I'm not saying he's going to be better than Stroud, but, he wasn't the first pick, but that quarterback that goes to a team and takes them to another level.
Right.
So I put Washington in that boat. Now, you could very easily put Chicago in that boat, but I don't think Chicago's going to be in play to go get Brandon Ayuk. They already went out and they had DJ Moore. They already went out and got Keenan Allen and they drafted Roma Dunze in the draft. So they're not going to be in play for Ayuk. But I do think Washington could be in play for a player like Ayuk. McLaurin's solid, but he's not a number 1A wide receiver. He would fit very well as the number 2 guy, Terry McLaurin, on that team, and pushing Johan Dotson, down a little bit. They did draft Luke McCaffrey. So if you had McLaurin, Ayuk, that changes the dynamics of that team, in my opinion.
It does, very much. And I would go as far to say that if the Washington team was to land Ayuk, you better start hitting that over on that betting line for Washington.
Well, you want to do it. You want to do it now in preparation if they make the move, because once you wait, that line is going to move.
That's true. That's true. Good point. My second, stick with the NFL. So I'm assuming you haven't watched the Netflix Receivers show yet.
No, I didn't watch the quarterback one last year either. So I tried. It just wasn't my speed. A little too slow.
That's fine. I like the quarterback show. I'm going to get to the receiver show at some point. But for those who didn't know, there was some speculation out there that on the show is Davante Adams. And Davante Adams was pretty vocal in the show with some of his frustrations with the Raiders and some of their quarterbacks and some of their coaches before the firing of McDaniels and Antonio Pierce becoming the head coach full time. To the point where rumors started to circulate that Davante Adams was forcing his way out of Vegas to go reunite with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. Davante Adams' agents have released a statement to ESPN saying, quote, "This is baseless, unfounded speculation, and Davante is expected to be with the Raiders as there have been absolutely no trade talks, period." Mike, your reaction to agents for a player having to overtly come out after the player already said in an interview, "I'm not going anywhere. I didn't ask for a trade." Now the agent saying there has been no trade talks.
This is all conjured up by, I guess it started in New York radio. Dan Orlovsky brought it up. Everyone's trying to take credit that they're the ones who came up with this idea.
Yeah.
Now the player said on the receiver show.
So for those who haven't seen the receiver show, there's clips out there that show that basically Davante Adams has said stuff like, I don't know how I'm supposed to be good in this offense. Jimmy Garoppolo might be the worst quarterback I've ever played with.
Ooh.
Stuff like that. Like he has shown his displeasure.
I did hear that he was critical of Garoppolo. I didn't hear the actual. What did he say?
He basically said that he's like the worst quarterback he ever played with.
Okay. Well, that's not good.
Although he only played with a handful of quarterbacks, so it's not like
Aaron Rodgers was one of them.
Right, exactly. So it's like Jimmy Garoppolo, Aaron Rodgers. I hope there's a gap there. You know what I mean? But to say he's the worst.
Yeah.
And basically Adams made complaints about how this offense isn't helping me be productive. How am I supposed to help this team win with this offense? Stuff like that.
Listen, he went to Vegas to play with Carr.
Correct.
They were teammates at Fresno.
Yep.
So that speculation once Carr left, and now the team's not very good, was easy to envision happening. But I don't know that. I mean, it's not going to happen before the season starts. I wouldn't imagine.
No, I wouldn't think so. At least. What's interesting though with the Raiders is that there's a lot of players like Adams who advocated for Antonio Pierce to be the coach. So it would seem pretty ridiculous if I want this guy to be my coach and then ask for a trade out of there. Like you said, it seems like this was created by people who don't actually have a say in what's going on, which is a shame that now the agents have to come out the same day Ayuk says, "I want out." Now Adams' agents are coming out and saying, "Trust me, our guy doesn't want out."
What is he supposed to say, even if he does want out? I can't imagine him saying, yes, he's under contract and he wants out of here. Not likely.
My couple other quick stories for you. I did want to acknowledge that Kobe Bryant's father passed away today. Joey Jellybean Bryant, who played for the 76ers for a time, passed away today. He was the 14th overall pick in the 1975 NBA draft. I know a lot of people most know him as being Kobe's father, but he was a very good player at LaSalle. So it should be noted, local ties, played for the Sixers, played at LaSalle, passed away today. Your thoughts on, I mean, it goes without saying, it's sad that the father passed away after the son, but, another part of the Bryant legacy is no longer with us.
Yeah, and Fran Dunphy, he was the one who, I guess, passed the information to the Inquirer. Dunphy's the LaSalle coach. He suffered a massive stroke, and that's how he ended up passing away. I was reading this story earlier today. So, yeah, I mean, he was the guy who stayed out of the public eye after Kobe's death specifically, and Kobe always credited his dad with basically teaching him. And remember, Kobe spoke multiple different languages in part because his dad had had played
in Italy,
all overseas. Right. So Kobe learned a lot from that. And,
for those who don't remember, Kobe, one of the things that came up in the documentary about the 2008 Redeem team was that he was speaking in other languages to players on other teams and like trash talking them. And, the guys like LeBron were like, is this really happening? Like Kobe's like walking up and trash talking guys other languages.
Yeah, he played for the Warriors, and then he got traded to the Sixers. I'm pretty sure is how he ended up getting to the Sixers there. But LaSalle, I mean, he LaSalle, it's funny because LaSalle has a great basketball history. I think they're getting the new scoreboard at the arena over there. But yeah, I mean, he was, I think he was a coach at Lower Merion, where Kobe went to school.
Kobe went to high school.
6'9", 8 seasons in the NBA. Sixers, Clippers, Rockets. You take a look at. He was on the Sixers team that lost to the Portland in the NBA Finals back in '77. That was the Walton team.
Yeah, it's just sad. I wanted to mention it, just as an acknowledgement, of hey, somebody else with ties locally in the region, sports-wise, passed away. So,
he played by the way, he played in France and Italy. So Kobe spoke, multiple languages based on where his father had been playing.
Yeah, according to Kobe's wife, he spoke 5 different languages. So, bit of a Renaissance man, that Kobe Bryant.
Well, that was well known. Yeah, that he was able to speak all the different languages. But yeah, it's sad story with, and one thing too, I want to say his dad, you go to, he was 69 years old. So you're going back when he played on that team in 77 with the Sixers. Other than that team there, the 83 team won the title. I mean, you're taking a look at, he was on one of the last teams to go back in 70. You're talking almost 50 years ago.
Yeah.
That, he was part of a team that went to a NBA Finals. And we've seen it twice since that team.
Yeah, there was an amazing run when Dr. J went from the Nets to the Sixers and took that franchise and elevated it.
Big time. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
And really quick, Mike, Gary Trent has signed a 1-year deal with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Ah, man, I thought you were going to give me something good there. Not what I was looking for.
Well,
all right,
you and Nick were talking about it earlier on Knicks Nuggets. So.
Yeah, well, we were hopeful.
You were very hopeful, but
that's a big signing by the Bucks, by the way. I mean, now you add Gary Trent, Middleton, Giannis, Lillard. Makes that team a lot different. Lopez, yep.
He might actually start for that team. Although I don't have to figure out, what other moves they might make, but I could totally see a lineup with Lillard, Trent, Middleton, Giannis, Lopez.
Good team. That's a big signing for them. Yeah, because you can go Lillard, Middleton, Trent, Giannis, and Brook Lopez.
Totally.
Big time. Bobby Portis is still there, right?
He is.
He didn't leave. And I think they have Prince is the other guy. So, big signing. That's a big shifter right there for the Bucks. I think that puts them into the mix. If you were forgetting about them, you shouldn't. Because that signing's a big enough one to put them back in the mix.
It was big enough to fit into the big 3.
There you go. All right. When we come back, Charles Barkley, John Clark asked Charles Barkley who he would love to take a picture with. We'll hear that coming up next.
Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One with pico and creamy chipotle ranch, and the other with bacon and avocado ranch. Chicken expert since 1990. Taco expert since now. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
All right, get ready to wrap up a Tuesday show here on the Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. So set this one up here.
So John Clark's Takeoff podcast, he had both Charles Barkley and Jason Kelce
on together?
Not at the same time. They were like back-to-back guests. But they're both playing at that Grand Century tournament over the weekend, like the semi-pro tournament. And so Clark asked both guys, is there somebody who you would still love to meet? Like, you guys are celebrities yourselves, Barkley and Kelce, but who's a celebrity that you want to meet? And Charles Barkley started rambling for a while about, I've met all these guys. He goes, but one guy's Miles Teller. And John Clark was like, Miles Teller? You're like, he's from the area, right? And then Barkley went on to say, he loved him in Top Gun Maverick.
I met Miles Teller, and I have my picture with him.
Yeah, so got one up on Charles Barkley.
That's who Barkley wants?
Charles Barkley wants Miles Teller.
Well, I got Miles Teller.
Maybe you can help him out. You know a guy.
Yeah. Well, maybe mine's Barkley.
You never met Barkley?
No. I don't think so.
So who would you...
I've met Kelce.
Who would be your...
I don't know that I have a great answer here because I just don't think like that.
Well, like for example, I know you love the Camping World guy.
Oh, Lamotis.
Lamotis, yeah.
I haven't watched that show in a while. Kind of went away.
Yeah.
But, well, I will, because I go to, I've been to a lot of games. I've been, going to the Radio Row, you just see so many people. Like The Rock. I saw The Rock. I don't have a picture with The Rock, but I was standing, as far as me and you are.
Gotcha.
That kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't, move me as much.
Doesn't move you.
You know what I'm saying? I don't know that I have a good answer for you.
Well, it's interesting because you said you haven't met Barkley, but you met Kelce.
I wouldn't say I met Kelce, but I've been in the locker room.
Okay.
When I used to go up there all the time, and so I'd see him in the locker room. I wouldn't say I quote-unquote met him. Like Joel Embiid, I've met many a times. I met his wife.
You said she was a nice lady.
She was. She asked me where the bathroom was.
Polite.
Yeah, I met LeBron.
You, Sal, and LeBron
That's one of my better
into a bar.
Yeah. Yeah, we walked into a bar.
That's funny though, because I've actually met Barkley. You haven't. Yeah, I met him over a decade ago. A buddy of mine were at a local establishment. He starts hitting me on the arm. He's like, dude, look over your shoulder. And Barkley was sitting a few tables away. So we walked over.
Who did Jason Kelce say?
Jason Kelce said Jerome Bettis.
Huh.
He was a big Jerome Bettis fan when he was younger.
I never met Jerome Bettis. But Miles Teller, tell Barkley, I've met him before.
Sure. Next time I see Charles, I'll let him know.
I met Mike Tyson.
You did meet Mike Tyson.
Pretty cool.
That's big.
Yep.
That's a big deal.
That's a big one. Yeah. I'll have to think about that more. All right, that'll do it for me. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. I'm off the next couple days. I might be back Monday. Hopefully not.
Mike Gill needs a break from me, so...
If I'm back Monday, that means we didn't win. If I'm not back Monday, that means we're at least in the finals. So we'll see how it all goes. Josh has you tomorrow.
Drive into summer with the Honda CR-V and Accord, your fun-to-drive, weekend getaway vehicles. From Honda, the 2024 Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com Best Value brand. So hurry in to the Honda Summer Event. For a limited time, well-qualified buyers can get a 2.9% APR on a 2025 CR-V or 2024 Accord.
See dealer for financing details based on 2024 Consumer Choice Awards from Kelley Blue Book. Visit KBB.com for more information.